Judgment Day in the elimination bracket. Three titans of the chess world will battle it out. Will it be the genius of Magnus Carlsen or the wizardry of Levon Aronian, or will it be the brute force of Hikaru Nakamura? Only one will enter the grand final. Where's James? James, what on earth?
I'm playing chess right now. I'm
studying. What are you guys doing?
I'm studying.
James, stop. We gotta go.
Hold up. Let me do 100 ball.
Yeah. Checkmate.
Yeah.
How on earth does he save this position?
Wow, Magnus just widening his eyes. They're shocked by this last decision.
He is showing no fear whatsoever.
Man, we got kids watching this.
This is checkmate incoming. And then king goes to a6 and there are no checks on the board.
Wow, he's just blundered a pawn.
He's gave away the pawn and he's lost.
He's given away the game.
His nerves are kicking in. He's throwing a thorn into the white side, holding on here for dear life.
He's walked away. Did you Oh my God.
So the king goes to d3. You see the bar go back to equal. Oh my gosh. That is beautiful tactile awareness.
It's over. We have a winner. We've had fantastic chess and so much fun at the Chessable Masters. Today, the players will be on their A game, and we'll make sure you don't miss any of the action. In the studio, calling it out, Grandmaster David Howell, FIDE Master James Canty.
Let's go.
And Grandmaster Robert Hess. Magnus Carlsen, Levon Aronian, Hikaru Nakamura are in the elimination bracket. That is not something the chess world is used to. How bizarre is that, David?
It's strange. This is worthy of being a final. In fact, it was the final last time. Hikaru Nakamura and Magnus Carlsen, Levon Aronian in the mix too, but so many surprises, especially yesterday, Tanya.
So many big moments. We had heartbreaks and celebration. That one move self-made by Hikaru. I'm still getting over it. James, have you seen anything like that by Hikaru?
Absolutely not. And the internet is still blowing up about it. I mean, it's crazy. He got mated in one. I mean, it's on the board everywhere, right? Of course, everybody's seen it. It was absolutely crazy, of course. Then you got Magnus Carlsen saying that, hey, I don't know what a loser's bracket is, basically. He was like, I've never been here before. It's just so much craziness going on in these matches.
Yeah. And we love it. We love it when the chess players do express these emotions. We don't see that often, and yesterday we had a whole lot of that. How special is that, Robert?
It's amazing because chess historically is played in silence. It's studied in silence. Now we see players duke it out over the internet, and then when they win their games, you see the fist pumps. When they lose their games, checkmate in one, they're shocked, and you see it on their face.
Yeah. Heartbreaks and celebration, big moments in day 3. Take a look.
Wow, actually, black is winning the position now.
He's winning.
Wow,
Oh
Levon's
my
winning.
God.
These are the correct times. Does black have enough time to win or draw
Black is
this
just
game?
screening the pawn. It's completely winning.
Look at this being 4
Levon.
seconds.
It's what they call the Lucina position. Black's pawn will make a new queen.
Oh my God.
2 seconds.
Oh my God.
There we go.
Oh.
Look at him celebrating. Oh my God. What an Armageddon.
It was a draw by repetition. They repeated it just in time because Levon was actually down on the clock at the end of the game, but he makes a draw there, and what a save.
Has Fabi just won a pawn for free?
Oh!
Hikaru steps back. He's lost 2 moves. The queen just came from this square. Fabi says, okay, I'll go back, and I've nabbed a pawn for free. Which way do you go with the white king? Forward! Whoa! So brave. Nerves of steel.
Oh my goodness.
He's gotta make a move.
That's
He
it.
doesn't-
He flags.
No, he made a move. It's coming in bunches. Don't worry, buddy. When these moves are happening, they come in quickly, and then the clock will catch up.
It's
Oh my
over.
goodness, what is that king doing in the bishop's line of fire?
Queen
That's a
H5.
resignation.
That's it. He resigns. Look at Hikaru.
Whoa.
He refuses repetition. He says game on and is taking big risk here.
But what's happening if you just shuffle across? Look, you're pinned along the A file and you're pinned on this diagonal.
Oh, wait, you're right about that.
Whoa. Fabiano's actually closing things
Brilliant.
down.
Brilliant, because that pawn A4 is stranded. It's gone too far.
Fabiano cannot lose this game. He's a pawn up.
10 seconds, David.
Yeah, 2 pawns up. Wow.
But a horrible pawn structure.
Yeah, but it's all about the white D pawn. If he keeps the central pawn alive, he might win.
And
it.
Oh my god!
You said they don't blunder checkmate in one, and then Hikaru immediately does. You commentators curse.
A one
hung mate,
move
bro.
checkmate, and that
hung mate.
is going to cost Hikaru the whole match. Wow, a lot of excitement and drama there, and this is on the menu for the day. How much risk are the players willing to take on day 4 of the Chessable Masters? We see there in our losers semi-final, this will be our first matchup with Magnus Carlsen taking on Levon Aronian. And on the other side of that matchup is Hikaru Nakamura waiting for the winner to take him on in the losers final. One player who's taking it easy, he's chilling today, is Fabiano Caruana. James, how much of an advantage is it for Fabi to get this rest in before the grand final?
I think it's a huge advantage for Fabi. I mean, Fabi's able to rest his mind and his body as he was trying to rest. You know, he's been lifting weights lately, right? So a little bit of rest there is always good. He gets to watch the games, check everything, see what they're playing, maybe some Armageddons, maybe some things go through his brain. But of course, that mental rest is very important because it starts in the mental. It starts right in the mind.
Yeah, so important to get that rest in. But one player who's got no time to rest because he's been in the elimination bracket since day 1 after losing to Vladislav Artemiev is world champion Magnus Carlsen, and he is the reigning Champions Chess Tour champion. He's of course been on fire after losing that game 1. He did mention that his match against Wesley yesterday was the best day that he's had on the tour so far. I still feel that he hasn't shown his best yet. David, what do you think about his play so far?
Yeah, first of all, what a CV that is. But you're right, Tanya. He didn't start at his best, especially day 1, losing to Artemiev. It feels like he's needed time to warm up, but he is moving through the gears now. Magnus getting better day by day, and that's a scary prospect for Levon Aronian.
It certainly is dangerous for Levon, because if Magnus Carlsen has not been at his peak, and yet he dismantled Wesley So yesterday, I feel for Levon, it's going to be a scary day for him.
Yeah, absolutely. It's going to be very, that's I'm thinking back on it, right? It's going to be scary because Magnus, the first day, that was just a Magnus we've never seen before. Like, Magnus, what are you doing, right? Then, of course, he comes and just destroys Wesley while he's eating nonchalantly, doing his laundry in the back, right? Still beating Wesley, right? And now, today, if he's even stronger, it's going to be a problem for LeBron Aronian. But Aronian, I'm sure, got something up his sleeve for today.
Yeah. Well, the 15-time world champion will be 15. What kind of a number is that? That's absolutely insane. But he has got his stars cut up as he is facing another stalwart. He will be playing against Levon Aronian. And what a fighter, one of the most creative players of the modern generation. He is a former World Cup winner. Robert, what will it take for Levon to get by today?
Well, Levon Aronian is a history maker. He has won the World Cup twice, the only player to do so. He's the 4th highest rated peak rating in history. He's won the Olympiad 3 times for Armenia. We couldn't list all of his accomplishments on this brief graphic. So for Levon, he is a maestro. He loves the flair of the game, and he's taken down Magnus many times before. He can do it again today.
Yeah, in fact, Magnus is on record. He said in interviews in the past, nobody has outplayed him more in chess than Levon Aronian. So he is capable. Levon's been there, beaten him, but he needs to bring his A game today.
Two things, right? LeBron Aronian is what I like to call him, of course, because you never know. And, you know, LeBron James in basketball, I mean, you got LeBron Aronian in chess. The man is an absolute beast. The second thing is 4 digits, 2830, 2830. One of the very few on the planet to reach 2800. So if he's able to tap into some of that ELO that he was able to achieve before, it could be a problem for Magnus.
Yeah. Only 14 players so far in the history of the game have crossed the 2,800 mark. Levon Aronian is one of them. them. This is just how strong the Champions Chess Tour is, featuring the very best players in the world. We are in the second leg of the tour. This is how it works.
The 2023 Champions Chess Tour is the biggest tour yet. With a thrilling, brand new format and $2 million in prizes, it's the richest online tournament of all time. The tour begins with 6 elite events taking place between February and September. Each event features an open qualification system with qualifiers and play-ins locking in 56 players to the main events. There, players are grouped into 3 divisions and compete for $235,000 in prizes each time. Victory in Division 1 in any of the 6 events secures a spot directly to the 8-player Champions Chess Tour playoffs in December. Players will also accumulate tour leaderboard points across the 6 events, competing for another $100,000 in prize money, and the unsecured playoff spots will go directly to the top leaderboard finishers. At the end of the year, we have 2 weeks of incredible chess, beginning with the playoffs, from which just 4 players will advance to the Champions Chess Tour finals, to a single elimination bracket, which will ultimately determine our champion. Together, the playoffs and finals feature a whopping $500,000 in prizes. There can only be one. In December of 2023, an undisputed tour champion will be crowned. Let the games begin.
The 235,000 Chessable Masters is heating up with Division 1, but also Division 2. We do have the winners final today with Nordebek Abdusattorov taking on Maxime Vachier-Lagrave. We see a big lead there, Robert, between the two of them, and in the losers quarterfinal right now, Kramnik against Yu Yangyi.
Yeah, the losers quarterfinal has Anish Giri. He is slugging out with Denis Lazovic, and of course Kramnik and Yu Yangyi. But Kramnik, he went down losers bracket after a pretty interesting day yesterday.
Yeah, there was a lot of action on the board, but a lot of drama off it. What happened there?
Yeah, it was really unfortunate, honestly, because early stages of that match, MVL, he was up a game. Game 2, Kramnik was on the verge of a winning advantage. He mouse slipped and dropped his queen. Then in Game 3, MVL said, here's giveaway. You take the point. You deserve it after that debacle in Game 2. And then in Game 4, all Maxime needed was a draw. Unfortunately for him, in an equal position, in an endgame, his connection went out the window. He lost. Instead of going to Armageddon, we saw the players agree that MVL should go on based on all the off-the-board debacle.
So much happening there. And then after all that settled down, we did hear from Maxime Vachier-Lagrave on Twitter. This is what he had to say. It's been a very frustrating day, as this was not how I wanted to win the match and had hoped for a full fight at the chessboard. I hope that from now on, all the action will only happen over the chessboard. And I would like to thank Vladimir Kramnik for his great sportsmanship and Chesscom for their reactivity in addressing this issue. Some classy sportsmanship there, but David, how frustrating is that for the players?
Frustrating is the word, as Maxime used there. I'm sure he wanted to enjoy the moment. He wanted to relish the challenge of playing a great champion like Vladimir Kramnik, but this is part and parcel of online chess, and in the end it was a nice touch of class from both players, as we saw there. Great sportsmanship, leading by example.
Absolutely. Class and sportsmanship are the words there. It's a competition, and this is like the future of chess. The online chess competitions, things like this do happen with the disconnections. And of course, just it's hanging queens, mouse slipping, things like that. It hurts that happens, but it is part of it. And the good thing is that they were, came to agreement there, great sportsmanship. And at the end of the day, people were able to pass through. And, even though he lost, that was Kramnik losing, no problem there, of course. Hopefully good karma comes to him, and then he can make it through and at the end of the day. So.
Yeah.
Pretty good.
I love that. I love that positive note there. And we also have action on in Division 3, where there are tour points as well as, of course, prize money at stake. And the grand final will be between Armin Tabatabai and Alexis Serrano. Alexis Serrano, we saw him in Division 1 of the Athens Masters. This is just a testament of how strong Chessable Masters is. And what we are looking for are some strong selfies from all of you watching us. Don't forget to send them with the hashtag ChessChamps. You can tag us on Instagram, and there is a grand prize of the new Airthings Wave Plus device. So you will be winning one of them, and we will reveal the winner at the end of the show. I love it. Very sleek stuff here. Don't forget to send us your selfies. We'll also be featuring some of them on our show. But right now, the show is about this big match that is coming up with Magnus Carlsen taking on Levon Aronian. They have played each other a bunch of times. I can't even do the math. That is a lot of games, but 32 wins to Magnus. James, what do you think about that scoreline?
The scoreline looks great for Magnus, but also, I mean, it's just, hey, LeBron Aronian for a reason. That's 21 wins. It looked like the Wesley thing. Now, of course, what happened there is like, oh, Wesley hit him. Wesley was swinging big Wesley So, and then he got flexed on real fast by Magnus there. So, yeah, the score says a lot, but he's definitely going to have to prove these 21 wins today.
And I think that Levon Aronian's style actually suits this kind of match well. It's only 2 games. Variance is high. And so for Levon, he always swings. He's always playing fighting chess. I think he can take Magnus down in this format.
Yeah, we saw in the graphic over 100 games against each other just in Rapid. That is incredible. They know each other's strengths, they know each other's weaknesses, and it'll be fascinating to see how they both try and pinpoint those during this match.
It is going to be about keeping your nerves in control when we will have time scrambles in those big clutch moments. These are the regulations of the losers bracket. They will be playing a best of 2 match. So the first player to get 1.5 points wins the match. They will have 15 minutes on the clock with a 3-second increment. In case of a tie, we will see the bidding Armageddon. But before that, it is a best of 2. The clocks are ticking, which means we are about to lift off. What, Robert, are you expecting in the openings here?
Oh, that's a good question from Levon Aronian. Typically a D4 player, but in recent years, he's playing 1E4, and he was always touted to be a player who plays D4 like he's playing E4, so he likes to mix it up.
Yeah. And Magnus had some really nice opening surprises there, going for this aggressive pawn sacrifices against Wesley. Are we expecting that kind of dynamic play from him with the white pieces today?
I think he's going to try to keep it more calm and quiet. You know, that's what Magnus likes to do. He doesn't look for big opening advantages. He likes the small squeezes, of course. And Aronian is creative. He likes the tactics. He likes the aggression, the powerful chess, right? The creativity here. Yeah, C4, right? I mean, it could be tactical, but of course, I mean, it could also be very slow here.
Yeah.
Got an English.
Yeah, it's the English opening. This is something that Magnus has used on occasion. Levon, famous for using this himself as white as well. And, okay, the 4 knights variation, all the knights coming out very early, and Magnus opens up the center.
And Magnus there with the food gambit as well. You see him. That's worked out really well in the past. It's a great opening.
Yeah, it's worked for him. Why not do it again? And Levon pausing at this early stage and not munching on the white pawn in the center. He's bypassed that, kicking away the white knight. I've got to admit, I've played the opening, the English, my whole life, and I've never seen this position already. Wow, the players surprising each other, surprising us. What could the idea be here? Will we see a bunch of exchanges in the center? No, Levon just brings his bishop out. Speedy development from Levon there, and already wrecking the white structure. Doubled pawns about to happen on the board for whites, and early days, but I quite like this position for Levon, I've got to say.
Yeah, so do I, because right now, white has those double pawns. And I feel like in speed chess, in quicker time controls, it's just more difficult to have these double pawns because they can get attacked and are difficult to defend. So I feel like for Levon, he's happy with how the opening has gone, but that pawn on E4, the pawn that was in front of his king, it's a bit too far. It can get stranded and white can attack it.
Yeah, that pawn, is definitely the target. And Magnus, to see him play such provocative chess, allowing these doubled pawns to retreat his knight, to kind of allow black to advance like this, it must be preparation. Magnus must have done his homework here.
Yeah, definitely. I'm just wondering, how does he have more time than what he started with while eating and facing this unfamiliar opening? But then, is there an opening that's not familiar to Magnus Carlsen?
That's true. Of course, I mean, he also understands positions, pawn structures. I mean, he understands everything. 5-time world champ, right? So, and 15 titles. It's insane, right? So, I mean, he can do really anything. G4, oh my goodness. There we go, big fella. There we go, Magnus. That's exactly what I'm talking about, big fella. That's how we do things around here. Yes, sir. G4 for the score, man.
He got you to jump off the camera.
Man, absolutely. G4, I love anytime I can play G4 or H4 in a game, I'm already, hey, look at LeVon, he like this. Like, bro, what the heck just happened? Not expecting that move from anybody. Oh, my goodness. I'm already hyped. Can't wait to see how this one pans out.
Yes.
G4. Can we explain it? I mean, can you guys explain this move for the people watching right now? Why am I so hype about G4 right now?
Go on, take it away, Robert. Has Magnus morphed into Shakhriyar Mamedyarov?
You know, it does feel like that, right? We see a position where white is throwing pawns at the board. The king is still in the center. That may seem dangerous, but black doesn't have pieces in the attack. And I was pointing out that the pawn on e4 can become vulnerable. You see the knight, the only piece defending it. White may push the pawn up to g5, kicking the knight out of there to win the pawn. Not to mention that black tries to stop g5 with move h6. That creates a hook in the position, so white can push the pawn to h4. And then when g5 is played next, you are opening up the kingside by force. That is bad news for the black king. So sometimes, I know your coaches tell you should always castle early. Sometimes castling early can backfire if the position opens up on that flank. Not to mention, just one more thing, that the white bishop can slide into g2 to put maximum pressure on the e4 pawn.
Yeah, it looks like everything's going in white's favor here, unless Levon Aronian can somehow mix things. It's really hard to go for the white king. This is why Magnus can get away with such early kind of naked aggression here, just throwing pawns forward, because the white king, super safe in the center. It's locked in the middle of the board, so this white king is feeling pretty comfy right now. You could imagine, actually, it castling on the other flank, opposite side castling, and big attacks either way. But this is the big threat. Levon Aronian, it's not easy for him to guard against it. For example, a move you would want to play is to bring the rook across, just to guard this pawn in the center that Robert's mentioning. But look at this, the knight trapped, nowhere to go, and already after a few moves, Levon Aronian on the back foot. Okay, after a bit of a think there, he does push his pawn, but questions to answer. He's basically going a pawn down on the next turn. He has to move his knight away. It's going to retreat somewhere, and after Magnus takes a pawn, Levon needs compensation urgently. Otherwise, he's just going to lose this game.
Move the knight to d7. I mean, just take the pawn. I don't know, what is he going to play after that? What are you going to play after I take this free pawn, put the bishop on d3? Oh, my goodness, my tactic senses are tingling. Like, Spidey senses, these tactic senses right now. Knight takes c4. There it is, bishop to d3, queen h5, and get him off the board. He had to play f5. I knew that was coming, though. Okay, f5. What does f5 do here, David?
I guess he's just trying to open lines. If the white knight retreats now, then black's queen is able to come out on the diagonal and grab a pawn on g5. But if Magnus captures this pawn en passant, as if it just moved one square, so the white pawn would capture on the f6 square, things open up. Black's pieces will come to life. And if we do a quick count, we see that white has only really developed one piece, the white knight in the center, whereas black is already castled. Black will have some open lines. The black knights are out. So, yes, white is one pawn up, but black is slightly quicker and slightly more active with his pieces. So does it balance out? I'm not sure. I'm materialistic, but what do we think?
Robert, Chad is confused. Is en passant forced?
No, it's in checkers. You don't have to take.
Okay.
That's a different game.
Okay.
But I actually think that en passant is the likeliest move. It's just very, very dangerous because if you take this pawn en passant, as Magnus just did, then black will take back with the knight, and lines are opening up. I keep saying this. When you drop a pawn, maybe it's a blunder, the good news is you have open files for your rooks. And here, the black rook on f8, the queen will join the party. The white king is sitting in the center. It's not very pretty. You have not developed your pieces, and Magnus moved his knight back to g3, so he's moving the same piece multiple times. He's lacking in development. The eval bar approves, but perhaps Levon Aronian likes the initiative here.
Yeah, there are already ideas on tap. For example, bringing the bishop out, hitting the white queen, trying to get control over the light squares. You could make an argument for jumping forward with the black knight. Again, attacking this pawn, trying to get the black queen out to a nice active square. White will have replies to this. White is still relatively solid, but there are certainly attacking ideas available to Levon, and we all know he's a dynamic player. Positional, strategic considerations out the window. He is going to go for the white king. That's the only way to justify the fact he's a pawn down. Long term, white has the two bishops, and white has that extra central pawn. So Levon knows it's here and now that he needs to strike back, and he does that by shuffling his queen across, lining her up with the white king. Early days, but who would you pick here, James?
I'm going to pick white here. Tanya, what about you?
Oh, I was hoping you wouldn't ask me that question. To me, it's just amazing that Magnus starts with the English opening. Supposedly a solid line. We were all expecting this to develop slowly. And then just g4 sacrifices a pawn for the initiative. Levon picking that up. And now this kind of a position, I don't really see a checkmate or a tactical blow immediately, of course, but it feels like a long-term compensation for black. The files are open. White still hasn't castled. Feels behind in development. The bishop, once it comes out to g4, I was just about to say, which has been stopped. Magnus making too many pawn moves. I'm going to pick black here. I love the compensation and the initiative. In this format, I think it's harder to defend than it is to play with just being a pawn up.
Yeah, usually you do burn a lot more time defending, trying to look for those resources. But Magnus, he's still playing really, really quickly. And this last move, it's not intuitive. It's not a natural one. Yes, you guard some squares, but look how loose the white structure is right now. Look at the white king. And Magnus must be feeling very, very confident to play a move such as this one.
Yeah, that was actually a pretty ugly move. I'm not going to lie. First off, Ben Feingold says never play F3 or F6. Shout out to Feingold. Of course, F3 and F6. First off, Feingold is tripping after that move. Secondly, right here, I actually still like white here. Believe it or not, I am a fan of the dynamic chess, so I'm going to castle queenside, believe it or not. I'm going to put the bishop on D3, maybe go queen C2, right? All the pieces are going to aim at the king side. I want to put a rook on G1. Daryl, come on. Magnus?
you read his mind?
I'm a Jedi. Some people forget that sometimes. Rook to G1, bishop D3, queen to C2, right? I'm going to put the king or bishop maybe on D2, castle queenside, and go for everything. Hence the move knight A5. I do like this move from Aronian. He's like, yeah, you probably want to get your king over there. He understands. He's aggressive and creative himself, so he kind of understands some of these ideas. He just puts the knight on an A5 and say, maybe at some point I can get my pieces over. Wow, he played E4
Whoa.
in the middle of the board. He just doesn't care about nothing today. What is this, Robert? What's wrong with him?
You know, he's brave. That's what Magnus Carlsen is. And I'm wondering if he's actually studied this position before. His rook on G1 is staring down at the black king. That's the good news for Magnus. The problem for him is his own king's in the center, but he's shielding his king with essentially a wall of pawns. It's a moat. Just like if you castle, you have pawns in front of your king. These pawns happen to be on the 4th rank. The bad news about having extended pawns like this is that they're easier to attack. A bishop for black can go to A6 or to E6, attack that pawn on C4 that's sticking out and doubled. So I feel like Levon will have his counterplay, but first he tries to take care of his king. King to H8, I think, is a smart, prudent move, and he will then go after the material.
Yeah, I love it because that rook move to G1, putting it on the G file, also stops Levon from bringing his own bishop onto the fianchetto diagonal, because you need to make sure that white's knight doesn't jump into the attack forward all the way to F5. So I like that move because it allows black's rook to step up onto the defense. Nicely played there, freeing up the pieces. I just think Magnus, he's playing fast, but he's made so many pawn moves. This is going to be a very dangerous position for white. I'm still picking black here, guys.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the white piece is still asleep, other than the knight maybe, which woke up a long, long time ago, but the rest need that wake-up call. And I think it's time for Magnus, as James mentioned, start developing those bishops. I'm not sure which one first, but bring one of the bishops out to the center. That white king really needs to get off the same line as that black queen. All of these considerations, but time is the issue. Do you have time for all of them? Levon will strike soon, and he'll strike hard and fast.
This actually reminds you of a Nimzo Indian, the A3. That's the same-ish variation, an A3, F3, something like that. But it's one of the variations where you actually put the knight on A5. Well, for black here, you play bishop A6. And the queen is actually nicely placed. In fact, Roman DZ slapped the keyboard, my guy. He actually does things. He has a very nice system for black here where he puts the bishop on A6. And you also bring the queen. In fact, it's already ideally placed. Usually the queen would be on D8. But actually, because it's on E8, you would actually put the queen on C6 to attack this C4 pawn. It's doubled, so bishop A6, this is why the knight's on A5 to attack the weak pawn on C4. Bishop A6 and queen C6 or F7 will attack this C4 pawn and try to bully it and win it. Many times you actually are able to win this pawn. There's only one piece defending it now, the bishop on D3. You go queen E2, that's a second piece defending, but 3 pieces attacking that pawn is going to be a problem for Magnus. So he needs to actually move very quickly here and figure out what to do. Bishop A6 is on top. We move the queen, and then I guess after he defends or attacks the pawn on C4 with queen C6 or F7, we may have a D5 there, which is overextending our pawns slightly here. I still like white here, but black definitely has some serious counterplay.
Yeah, I like those ideas, James. And I think Levon will choose either bring the black queen out or bring his bishop out now. Just maybe picking the order, worrying about if there are any consequences behind his moves. But yeah, already Magnus slightly ahead on the clock. I did fear that Levon Aronian might get in time trouble. Recently, he's been playing a bit slower, this tournament especially, maybe not at his quickest, not at his best. But yeah, that might come to pass.
Yeah, I'm so surprised looking at this position. I'm just wondering if Magnus is more distracted with the food than he should be, because this is insane. I mean, if we didn't tell anyone who are the 2 players playing here and played a little guess the ELO game, Robert, just with the king in the center, the pawns advanced, no development, It's the only good thing for white is that it's Magnus playing white.
And now knight's on the rim. So Levon's joining the party, right? He's like, you're eating, leave some leftovers for me. I want that cake too. And he's putting both of his knights on the rim. So they're breaking all the principles your coaches teach you. So listen to your coaches, everybody. Do as they say. None of these players do. They're so high level, they can do this thing. But it makes sense here because the rook on f8 for black after castling is on an open file. The knight moves out the way. There are some vulnerable squares in the position. That knight may jump into f4, forcing the dark square bishop off the board. Remember, white is up a pawn, so where is black's compensation going to come from? It's going to come from the fact that black's king is tucked in the corner, probably a little bit safer, and white will have these weak pawns, as James was pointing out, the c4 pawn in particular. It sticks out like a sore thumb. Black can team up on it, but Levon's first taking care of that dark square bishop. He does not want to see that one come into the attack.
Yeah, why not jump in, force that bishop off the board, as Robert says, and actually two targets, as both of you are mentioning, this one, but also this f3 pawn, a bit of a backward pawn. Black could certainly line up actually on this square, teaming up against this target and potentially on this target with the black queen. So, okay, this has happened. This was a very logical play by both sides. White's bishop pair advantage is gone. So it's just purely about material, and Levon Aronian, he won't be too worried actually about the structure. Black has access to squares, especially this black rook sitting nice and pretty now on f4.
Yeah, and what material? Those are two double pawns on the C file. James has been pointing out that it's going to be under fire. I don't really see it. What I don't understand is that why does our eval bar still like white's position so much? Lack of development, bad pawn structure, all for just one extra pawn. Is that enough, or is our silicon friend being a little deceptive here?
I don't know. I tend to trust the computers in messy, strange positions like this. Often computers get it wrong when it's really locked up, really closed, and sometimes late in endgames they do overestimate one side's chances. But here, I like Magnus's last move, gotta say. Maybe black has to retreat his rook. I don't know if there's any way to keep it on this active square.
That's the problem, right?
Yeah.
You want to keep it there. But unfortunately for Levon, he's got to move it back because otherwise his rook may be lost on the square. You try to protect it, it gets blocked, and then it gets won by white. So just for example, queen f7, knight f5 is an example. You cut off the circulation between the queen and the rook here, and that's a problem because now all of a sudden white wins material. So if you have to retreat, that's not a good sign. I like what Levon has been able to accomplish, but I feel like if you have to take a step back after making sure that your opponent no longer has the bishop pair, it's not entirely what Levon wanted.
Yeah, look at this structure. I don't think Magnus will play it now, but you could build the four-pawn wall, and this is pretty scary for Levon Aronian to face. So, also, James, you mentioned this idea earlier. Fortune teller here, castling queenside. Finally, it is available in the next few moves if you want to get your king to safety.
Absolutely. I'm a big fan of castling queenside here, and after I castle, I go rook to g2, and I double the rooks. And then watch where you look. You better be very, very careful here because I can just move the knight, and it may be knight-knight for you. So it's a very, very, very scary position and an attacking type of position, the positions that we all are fun and we love to play. So, I mean, it is some problems for Levon here, but definitely Magnus has to tread lightly. c4 is definitely hanging. I mean, sometimes you may have a queen a4 there in many cases, so you have to be careful from white's side too as well. I'm curious to see where he goes. He already surprised us here with f3 and like some other moves. So let's see what Magnus plays here.
Yeah, let's see what he plays. This is the type of moment where it would be logical for Magnus to take think because there are no obvious options. We've mentioned castling queenside, but James also highlighting the fact that black queen can actually jump towards that side of the board. And I've also mentioned kind of half-jokingly that white can step some pawns forward in the center, but that creates weaknesses as well, feels a bit loose. Nowhere for the white knight to jump forward to right now. So no logical, intuitive move. That's when the top players in the world sit on their hands and have a deep think.
Yeah. I'm listening to all of you and I'm still confused. Do you like white or black, David?
Definitely white.
White. James, what about you?
Definitely white. 1,000%.
All right.
I thought that James was going to say black because, you know, so everything you were saying, you're highlighting a potential attack, things of that nature, but I'm going to have to go with them because I think that white has a really cool move here. That oftentimes we're thinking purely in terms of attack, but I do think that white may take a step back before going forward. This knight on g3, it's not the best placed piece in the world. It can't jump forward. Maybe it should go back to f1 and then reroute to d2, where it protects both of white's weaknesses at the same time. We keep highlighting, and that's the only reason I thought about it, is that the c4 pawn, the f3 pawn, those are targets. Black's going to go after them. That knight on d2 protects them both.
Wow, that's fancy. I mean, it's not just the suit. It's not just, you know what I'm saying? He's fancy. Get that man on camera. He fancy, ain't he? Wow. Fancy in the suit, fancy on the board, fancy with the moves. Knight F1 is a fancy move. I actually like that. Reroute.
Yeah, it's a fancy move, but a really difficult one to find because we all know that in chess, retreating moves are the hardest to make. Magnus is having a think. Do you think this plan is on his radar, James?
Knight F1. I also like this E5 move. E5 is very committal, but my idea here is to actually just play Queen E4 there and actually hit the Rook and H7 at the same time. E5 is a really committal move, but if it works, I mean, there's definitely some potential there. I'm opening up the bishop line. I also can play Knight F5. It's something I'm trying to do. For instance, if a bishop B7, C5, something 5. Okay, yeah, he was thinking it. That's a crazy move, though. That's a wild move. Engine approves, but it's definitely a wild move. What if he just takes the pawn?
Yeah, I think Magnus knows that pawn was going to be a long-term weakness anyway, and rather than kind of hamstring himself, rather than saddle himself with a long-term weakness, he's happy to give the pawn back. And now it will be black with doubled pawns if he captures. I've got to say, I'm surprised as well. It was not on my radar at all. I was looking at ways to protect things as well, but Magnus stepping forward, showing the mood he's in. He's in an aggressive mood, Magnus. He's throwing all of his pawns forward at every given opportunity. And you're right, James. What's the reply if black just snaps that one off the board?
Especially with the B pawn. BC5, it opens up the B file. Now, casting queenside, you're going to have to watch. I mean, you about to block with your whole face. If you castle queenside, rook B8, I mean, you might get mated, real quick. So that's very scary. So I'm not sure what he has in mind after BC5, which is now on the board.
Yeah, strange to play C5. Your opponent kind of takes the pawn you've just offered and then start to think. Yeah, pretty strange by Magnus. Okay, he recaptures, but now ugly pawns again. And I really don't like the fact that he's given the black queen access to some really nice squares in the center, which is immediately utilized by Levon Aronian. Suddenly, threats have appeared. This pawn under fire, this pawn under fire. And Magnus, is he losing control?
It looks like it, yeah. Because when you have not castled your king, why are you opening up the position? Your king is in the center. I think that this was a mistake from Magnus. The evaluation bar suggests that it's not so bad for him. He's still hanging right in this game. But I just don't like the trajectory of the game. At first, Magnus seemed to be the one in control. He forced Levon's rook back, and then he pushed his pawn too soon when his king remains in the center. And now he is backtracking with the knight. And maybe queen d4 next, actually. If he can trade those queens off the board, he will be better. He is up a pawn.
Well, then it might be time for black to actually recapture that pawn with his own pawn, taking away that central square that you're talking about so that there's no more queen trade. Can Levon level the material by recapturing on c5?
Level Levon. I like it, Tanya. Yes, he can take this pawn. I guess Magnus's idea would now be that he has a pass pawn of his own. Long term, okay, he takes this pawn with his queen, but long term, white does have a passer in the center. So, for example, you could start gaining time, hit the black queen, and as James actually mentioned earlier, push forward, try to start attacking the black king. That's why Levon went for the queen trade. He was too scared of this continuation, and in this position, he simply took with his queen instead. And now we see a structure like this one. Black has these ugly doubled c-pawns. White has a passer long term, but can White get his pieces organized? I wouldn't be surprised if Magnus actually uses his king as an active defender. There is a pawn under fire here, under threat, so why not defend it with your king? And we're in the endgame. We know who that favors in terms of strengths and weaknesses. Magnus, endgame maestro.
Yeah, the Magnus touch that we keep hearing about. Magnus Carlsen is an absolute beast when it comes to endgames. But in this particular one, Levon looks like he's got his own trumps. That f3 weakness, he can start targeting it. Maybe reroute the knight to the center of the board. Robert, you highlighted it. Knight on the edge, that a5 knight, not liking it. Is that a piece, James, that needs to come back in the action?
Absolutely. Of course, from Chessable books, I always like to give you guys those, right? A Grandmaster Preparation, positional play from Jacob Agard, right? What is the worst place piece? Now, of course, when you ask that, it could be a few of them, but definitely the knight on a5, even the rook on a8 is pretty rough too as well. You haven't moved it. The bishop on c8, not really a terrible piece. It has options, but the knight, definitely not one that you need to figure out where do you actually want to put it. It's off sides right now. You also have a weakness on c5, but at least the rook on f8 is active. For black, I do like the idea of moving my king to f2, maybe even moving it to e3, having a very active king here as we approach an endgame here. And even rook g5 at some point is going to attack that c-pawn. So we have to figure out what we want to do. Maybe we move the knight to b7. That's an interesting move. It defends the pawn because black actually is facing a dilemma here. With this c5 pawn, rook g5 is going to be quite annoying. King f2 is on the board.
And we're facing a dilemma, picking your selfies because you're sending such great ones. Don't forget to keep them coming. We will be revealing the winner of our selfie contest. Use the hashtag ChessChamps and you could win this very cool new black Air Things device. So keep those selfies coming. We will be featuring them on our show.
Yeah, and I've got to say, I'm really surprised. I like White's position. I think White has the better pawn structure. But a few minutes ago, we saw Stockfish, the engine suggestions, and it gave White a +2 advantage.
+2?
+2. That feels huge.
From where? What part was +2?
King F2 apparently
King F2
gives a
+2.
massive advantage
Wow.
for White. And we see the evaluation bar heading up so drastically. And James, you mentioned some of the ideas for White. Bring the White King to the center, bring the White Rook up on the G-file. Maybe it's just a combination of those. Long-term, Black struggling.
Wow.
I'm surprised it's that big, I've got to say, that advantage.
But Black has nothing to attack. That's part of the problem here, is that the one weakness, the king, just protected. This is an endgame. Use your king to your advantage. Don't just hide it away like you have to do with queens on the board. The king will slink forward up to E3. It'll protect everything. And at some point, White does have a clear passed pawn in the center. And James pointed out a great idea for White as well. Rook to G5, hitting the pawn along the 5th rank. And then you can double your rooks in the G-file and launch an attack. So White actually has the safer king, even though it's more out in the open. And I think that Black has a lot to deal with.
And there we go. Magnus puts that move on the board. He hits this weak pawn. Levon Aronian reacts with a counter threat, hitting the loose white bishop. But I'm expecting Magnus now to go for that idea. Okay, he doesn't bring his king into the center. He moves his bishop out the way. So still this pawn in the firing line. How can Levon Aronian get some counterplay? The evaluation bar did drop slightly, so maybe this bishop not that well placed on b5 for White. Feels like it is a target. Black can kick it away at some point with a pawn. Maybe some counterplay. The White Rook, sorry, not the White Rook, the White King, now no longer covering an infiltration by the Black Rook. And, okay, that's why I was skeptical originally. It didn't feel like that dominant a position for White. It feels like you can still lose control if you're not careful, and Levon Aronian will try and work some kind of magic, some kind of chaos into this endgame. It's not going to be as one-sided as the earlier evaluation might suggest.
Practical chances. I mean, practical chances, meaning, you know, you're playing a human here. Well, Magnus feels like he's half a human, right? But at the same time, of course, these guys are extremely strong here, and he's creating threats, him meaning Magnus, doing great things. I mean, you can double the rooks here. King E3 definitely is looking good, too, as well. I mean, what does Aronian even do about the C5 pawn? Do we push past, maybe play C4, but then that opens up the D4 square for the knight there. C5 is actually hanging. I did mention knight B7, but that's probably why he played bishop B5. So you can go bishop C6 or A6 now to attack this knight, and that's defending the pawn on C5.
Yeah, it's looking difficult. Levon Aronian 1.5 minutes down on the clock as well. Maybe we can bring back those computer suggestions. How can Black minimize the damage? Or how can Black at least ask some questions to Magnus Carlsen? I don't really see his kind of strong, convincing move here, I've got to admit. If the Black Rook does come down to the second rank, the White King's going to kick it. And wow, only one move keeps the advantage, White's advantage, at manageable proportions. Pawn to A6, Robert.
Of course, obvious.
Yeah, obviously, right? No, A6 is actually a wonderful idea, one that was not on any of our radars. We all looked at each other here like, what? But it makes perfect sense once the engine suggests it, because if White is to take the pawn on A6, that opens up a line for the Black Rook. The Rook shifts back to its starting square on A8. The bishop moves back to B5. The knight comes into B3, taking advantage of the fact that the pawn on A2 is pinned, because if you take the knight, you lose your rook. And that would not be good. And even there, actually, it says that White is still slightly better. But if you move your rook away instead of taking the knight, then the Black Rook infiltrates, and that knight on B3 protects the C5 pawn as well. So there are tactics everywhere. The knight can come into D2 to win the F3 pawn. Yikes, this is just a crazy line.
Yeah, and not just the F3 pawn, the E4 pawn will also be hanging here because the F3 pawn is pinned with forks everywhere. Now A6 just giving up a pawn to actually defend the pawn. What a creative idea. But if there's one player who can find it, it is Levon Aronian. He is thinking currently in the position. He's burnt the clock, and he does it! He does it!
Oh my God.
What a guy!
LeBron!
He plays at A6.
LeBron Aronian.
I think we know what the half everything else is. Stockfish.
Stockfish. Boy, you better get him checked.
And it's on the board, Robert. It is on the board. The rook on the A file. This is fire. Is Magnus Carlsen going to go into a think tank right now? How difficult is this for White?
I think the shock value is enormous here. Magnus will not have had this on his radar when he first brought his bishop over to b5, and just genius from Levon Aronian. Amazing, creative, active defense. That's the key. And now, Robert, you predicted it. That black knight on the board, hitting that white rook in the corner. Black has counterplay. The momentum is on black's side. Ignore the evaluation bar. This one, anything can happen now.
And it's one of the biggest compliments people give Levon Aronian is he is able to solve technical tasks tactically. And that's what he just did. His position looked bad. His structure was ugly. These doubled isolated pawns on the c file and isolated a pawn. He says, here, take it. I'm going to jettison that pawn to open up lines for my pieces. He wants the tactics to get going. He wants active play rather than passive defense. And right now the rook moves. He could take this pawn on a2. Actually, I'm not sure why the evaluation bar is so heavily in white's favor. Yeah, Black's suddenly getting counterplay, but Magnus seems unperturbed.
Yeah, just calmly centralizing his king, calmly centralizing all of his pieces. There's a nice little diamond formation in the center there with white's pawns, bishop, knight, and the white king, safe as houses in the middle of the board. So, yeah, this one maybe still favoring white objectively, but it needed Magnus to keep that calm head. A lesser mortal like me would have been panicking. I would have seen Levon's move. I would have thought, oh my gosh, I've blundered. It's turned around. But Magnus keeping calm, moving quickly. That's the more important factor. Levon down to 1 minute. Can he keep the tricks coming? Can he keep finding those dynamic ideas to test Magnus?
Well, two things here I think that are wrong with LeBron's position. One is the time. Okay, the time, you have to use it as a piece here. You can't be down that much time. It's almost the same thing with Hikaru. You down a lot of time on Hikaru, it's not going to end well, right? Same thing with Magnus. It usually doesn't end well. He's down a lot of time here. Number two here is after he made all of this play, right? A6 was great. We got the rook to A2. Now what, right, is the problem. It's like, now what do I do? The knight is kind of strange over here on b3. I have no squares, actually, especially after king e3. Okay, it is defending my c5 pawn, right? But, of course, white still has the pass pawn. I can now play f4, f5, get these pawns rolling. I can double the rooks, and really, my king, bishop, and knight are just chilling. They're just kind of chilling right there. Maybe you could play c4 at some point as black here, pawn to c4. We back the bishop up and attack the rook, right? But we still, I mean, we have tempi, rook to g1. We still can play f4, f5, and it feels like there's something for white in every position.
Levon took so much time there.
Oh, wow, he got 15 seconds. What did he play? H6?
Just a little move on the king side, attacking the rook. But Levon Aronian is down to 14 seconds. Rook e5 attacks the bishop, falls back. Things are getting tricky for black, not just on the board, but the clock.
Yeah, it feels like Levon is actually the one panicking here. It's inconsistent to kind of play such active chess on one side of the board, then take a timeout with a quiet move on the other flank. But, yeah, that 3-minute advantage, that might be even more decisive than white's advantage. Now,
that's a big pin. Yeah, that's a big pin. If you sidestep with the king, maybe he's thinking about an exchange sacrifice on f7 and bring that bishop on the diagonal. That could be brutal for black.
So maybe that was an only move to stop that bishop c4 idea that Tanya was talking about. But this drops the pawn. That knight was doing a very important defensive task. It goes back to the rim. We keep talking about how dim it is over there. And c6. Now the knight again is saddled to the defense of a pawn. White a clean pawn up now and with the advantage.
And Magnus, Levon, not Magnus. Levon shaking his head there. He's not happy with this. That knight on a5 has been a big problem in his position. It continues to stay so. And now it is Magnus Carlsen who does have the extra pawn and a lot of extra time on the clock. Will Levon be able to hold this one?
No. Yeah, it ain't looking good here. Especially, I mean, after a move like h4, how slow of that is. I mean, that's just, you got so many moves, and he just plays h4, stopping g5. That's tough. I mean, you got a lot of things to think about here. I only have a few seconds left. He is literally about to flag 2. Well, okay, yeah, he made that with 2 seconds on the clock.
Trick from Levon Aronian. He throws in a check. If this knight is captured by the white bishop, black's rook is actually on the third rank, going to come and take a pawn with check, attacking multiple pieces. Magnus, I think, must have missed this trick. Levon really resourceful. He played this move with 2 seconds on his clock. But the problem is, Magnus can just capture this knight. And if we do a quick count at the very end here, after this bishop retreat, white has a knight and bishop for black's rook. Not just that, white's central pawn is going to start marching forward very shortly. So knight and bishop versus rook is a small material advantage, but also there's 2 versus 1, and that should be enough to win this game for Magnus. Still some work to be done there.
Unfortunately, those pins, we see a pin along the third rank towards the white king, and now a pin along the d file towards all of white's pieces, but you can't maximize it. There's no pressure to continue putting on these pieces. White will step out of the pin in the near future. You have to be careful, as David was saying, but even pushing your pawn forward at this point seems to be a good way to cause black enough problems, and then you continue marching that pawn forward. Black will not be able to exert more pressure and win a piece.
Yep. Anytime the black pawn steps forward to kick away this white knight will move with tempo. For example, it can kick away this black rook and land itself now on a beautiful square. Just, blocking everything, creating threats of their own with knight forks, and this one should be game over. Magnus just needs a few accurate moves. This is the current position. We're all expecting him here to step his pawn forward. No, he drops his knight back instead, but this pawn forward will come later. Magnus just holding things. All you need to do is avoid any tricks against your bishop to do with these pins. Levon shaking his head yet again. Should be over soon.
Yeah, Magnus played like a computer here. I mean, really half man, half machine for real here. It was just, it felt like black had something at one point, but he really, at the end of the day, really just didn't have anything. The night was very, very bad for majority of the game. And then we also got low on time, which causes lots of problems when you get low on time. We got some counterplay, though.
Yeah, the problem is the white knight has a beautiful square to sit on in the middle of the board.
Yeah,
it can block the black rook on the d file, and the black pawn's very weak. Unfortunately, you only have 2 pieces with black, the 2 rooks. White has 3, bishop, knight, and rook.
When you're down material as the defense side, you've got to try and trade off pawns. So Levon going for that path with g5, but it doesn't look like the troubles are going to stop here. Is Magnus going to take this one? Because if he does, that means that he would need just a draw to clinch the match and face Hikaru. Levon will play the next one with the white pieces. What are the chances of Lev saving this one?
0. In fact, 0%.
Hasn't changed.
It's not even going to change. I'm not even going to lie here. 0%. There's just nothing there. I mean, he's down on time. What do you think, Robert?
0 is high. That's a really high number for this position.
But just don't miss the c4 trick that Levon's setting up right now.
That is the one trick available. It's talking about a pin along the 3rd rank. So if black can push that pawn successfully, then white will lose this bishop. However, Magnus, plenty of time on his clock. Even though he is getting himself a little bit lower, he blocks the pin. Now his bishop can move. And once he's solved all of his problems, he does have a pass pawn. As David said, he has 3 pieces, just 2 for black. And, he brings knight backwards. He's doing that backwards to go forwards.
Knight b1.
What a move. It's like you pointed out earlier, Robert, that knight f1 move you mentioned earlier. Backward knight moves are the hardest to see, the trickiest to see, but the whole idea is he's going round the long way. He's rotating his knight around to blockade that black passed pawn. There we go. Now, the knights are the best blockaders. That black pawn is rendered irrelevant, pretty much, and white's rook is finally free to go active itself. Just beautiful strategic play.
Yeah, that was a really nice maneuver there by the knight. A bit of a masterclass there on how to play these endgames. But that is the Magnus touch, and it seems like he is on the way to victory. Is it as simple as just advance with the king and the e-pawn?
Yeah, or deliver a checkmate. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if the white rook goes up the board. Well, now you can trade rooks. That should be easy enough. But Magnus says, why should I do that? I'll go after your weak pawn, put black in a defensive posture, and it might be time soon to push that e-pawn, but first bring the knight into the game.
Yep, he's sport for choice here, Magnus. Pretty much anything wins at this point. That white rook as well. Once it gets active, once it starts checking that black king, it will be game over. Simply mating attack, I think, is the word. And why not lead the attack with a king? The king leads from the front here in an endgame. And, offering that trade of rooks. White's central pawn should guarantee the win, even with a set of trades. And here we go, all the pieces combining. Look how well coordinated they are. The white knight protects the white bishop. The white king is marching either side forward now. The white pawn in the center, just doing a fantastic job. Black is stuck. Everything defends each other for white, and beautiful. You can see the frustration on Levon Aronian's face. He knows he's done not that much wrong in this game, but he's been powerless to avoid defeat.
Yeah, it's almost hard to pinpoint the moment when things went so wrong for Lev. And I'm just wondering if it was that critical queen trade while fighting for initiative, which is the point when Magnus got the advantage and converted it flawlessly to victory. Magnus taking the first game in his mini-match against Levon. Sum that game up for us, Robert.
Well, Magnus, he won a pawn in the opening. He played an ambitious line by pushing his kingside pawns up the board without castling. And then he gave a pawn back at the right time to get active play. So he said material will be equal, the position will not.
Yeah. That was a power-packed performance by the world champion in game 1, and this is our scoreline. Levon Aronian with the white pieces has to win on demand to level the score and take it to Armageddon. We will be back with the action, but first, for our non-subscribers, we've got a Twitch break.
Welcome everybody.
My name is Jan Nepomniachtchi, former world chess champion.
Are starting a new course here for Chessable.
A very special Chessable course.
Master your chess with Judith Bolger.
You know what? I learned a lot.
Chess is an exercise in awareness. It is evolution in motion. I evolved. This is where I am today. I like the feeling of strength that the pawn on d5 gives me. It feels like building a castle, a fortress. Pawn goes to d5. It is supported by its brother on c6. Knight comes to f6 for more stability. Bishop goes out to f5 as a guard outside the gates. Eventually, the pawn on e6 forms the triangle for the safest pawn structure in the center. It gives me confidence for the upcoming battle. This is the Chebanenko Slav.
If you want to learn an opening, we all know Chessable is the place to go. But what if you want to find out what openings to learn? Chessable is now here for that too. Find the openings best suited for your playing style using their new quiz. Whether you want to be a booked-up positional grinder or an unorthodox tactical wizard, Chessable has all the answers. Go check out the Chessable quiz using the command quiz in chat. Take the quiz today. And today, Levon Aronian has to do what is very difficult to do. He needs to beat Magnus Carlsen in the next game. He will start with the white pieces. Now, it looked like a power pack performance by Magnus, but Lev had his creative moments. That move a6, breaking open on the queen side. He did play for the initiative. If anyone can do it, it is Levon Aronian. He is an artist. Let's take a look at the life and inspiration in Levon Aronian's words.
T-shirt from the movie Coming to America, and it's kind of symbolic that I'm coming to America, becoming part of this country.
Together with his girlfriend, Levon Aronian has moved into his new home next door to the chess club in St. Louis, USA. He was first introduced to chess by his sister at 8 years old in Armenia. Since then, he's come a long way.
She taught me to play chess because she said, okay, you're too annoying, here, do something. And then, then I fell in love with the game.
Levon had an incredible natural talent for chess, and at only 10 years old, the family became dependent on him to get food on the table.
Because of the fall of Soviet Union and a lot of problems in Armenia, my father and my mother, they were not earning anything really. So I was earning the money by getting sponsors.
His parents sacrificed a lot during the 1990s. Life was hard in Armenia back then, so Levon's success as a chess player was their only hope.
Back in the day, okay, I did have some sponsors, but I knew that if I travel to one tournament and if I don't play well, I cannot play any more tournaments. And in order to secure myself, which was of course foolish of me, at the age of 15 I would play blitz at nights. You know, just to earn some money on the side, you know, because for amateurs of different countries, I think this $5 a game was nothing. But for me, $5 was a huge amount of money. You can see I'm a popular person in St. Louis. I feel very welcomed here, and also the people at the club and everybody that is working for the club are very welcoming. So
Levon Aronian is one of the most loved personalities in the chess world, but he's not loving his situation right now against Magnus Carlsen in the losers semi-finals, as he has to win on demand. He does start with the white pieces. How does he do this, James? What does Levon have to do in this one?
He beat him before, beat him again. Exactly. E4, best by test. Swing it, and you got a Karol Khan. Okay, now Karol Kaniski here. We're about to swing on him. Okay, there's a lot of ways that you can swing at the Karol Khan, pan off Botvinnik, right? You can go E5. Of course, Geary got the new part 1, so hopefully he was digging in some Chessable there. See, there we go. Pan off Botvinnik. Let's go. Let's see what we got. Now you take twice and play D4. Oh yeah, I know these. So you can play D4 right now. Yep. Let's see what we got. It's nice. I like this. What you think?
I love it. I used to play this all the time when I was young. And I will point out, Magnus's score with the Karol Khan is much lower than his score with E5 and C5. So maybe not his best scoring opening statistically. Can Levon take advantage? Okay, he's playing this variation. James, is this in your repertoire?
Absolutely, of course. In fact, you know, come on, you know, I know Chessable like an encyclopedia, guys. You can actually get the pen off Botvinnik by, I think it's Sam Collins, if I'm not familiar, if I'm correct there. But Sam Collins, actually, pen off Botvinnik, you can just search it on Chessable. Very strong. I actually have some very nice wins with this, OTB and online with this. Now, of course, Erwin LME has a very nice response. I'm giving out too much right now. Y'all gonna have to send. I'll give you my PayPal chat, okay? But I'm giving out too much. But Erwin has a very nice antidote to this, the way that he plays it, but it's very theoretical, and it goes like 25 moves deep. So it's very deep theory here, but there's a very nice antidote with this. It actually is just bishop to G4. That's it for black. And then you go down a very theoretical line. Also, Grishik has a P-sack line that I actually use very nice here. He plays A6. That actually comes from Krzysztof Selecki's course. So this one, I'm giving out too much, okay? I'm going to send y'all my PayPal. But A6 comes from Selecki's course. This one is not played as much, to say the least.
Oh, I'm so annoyed at myself. About 1 minute ago, I was going to say Magnus is definitely going to play A6 here. He's played it before online hundreds of times. And then he does it. I would have looked like a prophet. I would have looked like a Jedi myself, James.
A Jedi. You are a Jedi, David. You
Look
are
at
a
this
Jedi.
Instagram snap that we got here, right? Look at this. What did Mars say the GM has? Hesami Mario. I mean, come on.
That is great. He got to win.
Yeah,
that one wins.
You know, I usually ignore this social media stuff chat, but that one's good, right?
Robert's got his vote in on this one. That's the one he's picking. Well, we will reveal a winner at the end of the show, so keep those photos coming. David, you mentioned that Magnus doesn't have a great score with the Karol. Mm-hmm. That's a strange decision then, to go for it in this very critical match when he just needs to draw.
It's all relative, Tanya. He's got a decent score with the Karol Khan. It's just he has a fantastic score with the Sicilian, a fantastic score with other openings. But Magnus, he likes to keep his opponents guessing, and maybe he will have just assumed that Levon had ideas up his sleeve against his main repertoire, so why not throw in an early surprise? Magnus doesn't care about playing solid chess, doesn't want to play for a draw. He's very principled. He plays chess for the love of chess, and if the results come, great. But meanwhile, some tension in the center. Magnus holds his center with a slightly artificial-looking move, but a very solid one with his bishop here.
And I'll add that by playing the Karol Khan, he likely avoided the preparation that Levon Aronian had in store for him today, because Magnus does not often play the Karol Khan. Levon likely looking at E5 and C5, as Magnus has been playing in recent events. So this is a good decision, even though in the Queen's Gambit they say the Karol Khan, all pawns, no hope. I think if you're a fan of Magnus Carlsen, you hope that he'll use it with great success, because his position looks weird with that bishop in front of his king's pawn.
Yeah, a very odd-placed bishop. We should just point this one out. And you can't get carried away here. There is a trap. This bishop looking very odd. If you get greedy now and take a pawn, it looks like, oh, you've won a free pawn. You're defending this one with your bishop too. But the knight, a key defender, will be removed forcibly here. You take this knight, and unfortunately for black, suddenly, the placement of this bishop and the placement of this knight comes back to bite you. This is a fork, a double attack, and you will lose one of these two pieces next move. So Magnus, I'm pretty sure his idea is to actually develop this bishop a different route, just by pushing his pawn forward, playing the move G6, and fianchettoing this piece. That tends to be the idea here, and just as I say it, he plays it. Once the bishop gets out, once black gets castle to safety, then you can decide how to release the tension in the center.
There you have it, David, your prophet moment. It's here, G6, you said it, Magnus going for development. And how do you see white proceeding? Because very often white also delays the development of the F1 bishop. But is it time now to look at getting the king to safety?
You need to do something.
It was h4 for the score. I mean, when you see
I love it.
g6, I mean, you just play h4. That's automatic. You see that with the neural network engines now, and you play h4 all the time. You don't even know what's next. You just play h4 because you can do it, right? So h4 is very strong. I think I actually had an OTB game like this that I was actually winning. Unfortunately, I ended up losing the game in the in-game there because I just blundered something back. It was a long time ago. But h4, I think, is a very nice move here. I think queen b3 you can actually get away with, too. It's a very tricky move there, queen b3. And if knight a5, you go queen a4. There's some tricks through here. But I think h4 is really nice here. You also could play c5, too, as well, kind of release a little bit of the tension here. Maybe bishop e2, that's the quiet way of doing it. But LeBron should not be quiet here right now because he definitely needs to go, I think, maybe all out here. h4 it's not too committal. It definitely is annoying, and you want h5 at some point here. But, I think Magnus might just play bishop g7 anyway here. We're just going to have to figure out what we have to do afterwards. Do we take? Do we play h5, sack the exchange? It's not enough there yet. So we just have to see what happens. But I definitely like the h4 move. What about you, Robert?
Yeah, no, I'm curious to see what's going to happen here, but we do have some results in the books, not in this division because this is the only match underway, but there is a winner in Division 3, and it is Amin Tabatabai. Wow. The Grandmaster from Iran takes $5,000 and the division title here in the Chessable Masters. Congratulations to him.
Big fella.
Wow. And what a performance. He took down Alexei Sarana, a really difficult, formidable opponent. So congratulations to Amin. Coming back to this position, James, you mentioned h4. Is it one of those moves where Tal would say, go h4, think later?
Well, of course, grandfather Tal always says, I mean, if you can see the resemblance, that is my grandfather, absolutely. h4 for the score. He also said, sack first, think later, right? So, of course, we do want to sacrifice some material here. I actually recommend, of course, Life and Games of Tal, which is on Chessable, of course. It is a Chessable. I know, I'm going to know, right? It is a Chessable course. You also can get the hard copy, too, as well. But the Chessable course with Simon Williams actually going through it, of course. Who's better to do it than Simon, right? Aggressive chess himself, too. I highly recommend you get it and get in the right mindset of, like, attacking chess. Life and Games of Tal, and also the new book out, Fire on the Board, by Shiroff, is now on Chessable, too, as well.
I think Levon's frustrated here. Yeah. He's spending a bunch of time. He came into this game hoping to get an aggressive play. You called for the Botvinnik. He went for it. But this position from the black side, it looks really weird. There's a bishop in front of the king's pawn. The kind of legends of the game from a century ago would look at this position and roll their eyes like, this is a Potzer. What is this Magnus Carlsen doing with his bishop on e6? But it works out because the center is well defended. And not just that white center could be under attack. When you push your pawns forward, that leaves some squares and your pawns behind. The d4 pawn, for example, cannot be defended by another pawn, and that could be an issue later in the game for Levon Aronian.
Yeah, for sure. I completely agree. This is modern chess at its finest. You would never have seen this type of idea years ago. But Magnus, he studied this clearly with engines. He's been playing this, when I was researching for playing him recently, he's been playing this setup plenty of times. So it does surprise me that Levon Aronian hasn't come prepared. I think he could have predicted this position pretty much on the board if he had studied Magnus's games in the Caro-Kann. But that's why Magnus is such a difficult one to put your finger on, a difficult one to trap in the opening, because he plays everything. And he knows everything so well. Already a 4-minute time advantage almost, and looking promising for black. I'm expecting Levon to castle. He wants to channel his inner Tal, of course, but it's hard in this type of position. Unfortunately, that's why openings are so important. If you don't get your type of position, it's impossible to even initiate an attack. So just get castled Levon and then think later. I think that would be my advice, but easy to say, difficult to do.
Big tension in the center in this one. And as I say, it has been fixed. Levon Aronian decides he doesn't want to take any chances with that c4 pawn, pushes it forward to c5. And Magnus jumping in immediately with the knight to the center. I was expecting him to bring the king to safety.
Yeah, but he says, why not now? Because knight e4, that he's actually making look at target of the d4 pawn, because that was what I was pointing out. As soon as you push your pawns, you leave some behind. And if white were to take this knight on e4, that would be a huge blunder, because after black takes back, the d4 pawn is Magnus for the taking, and that would not be good news for Levon. So I actually think that Magnus, he's making the right decision. He's getting active while he can before he allows white to just expand on the queen side.
Yeah, and difficult dilemma here for Levon Aronian. His bishop is also attacked. His d4 pawn, a clear target. It looks like it's essential now to retreat this bishop, defend that pawn. But now you're passive, and black's bishop here looked like a terrible piece earlier, but watch out for it coming to the g4 square, trading off one of the key defenders of this pawn later. I would expect both sides to castle, but later on the black bishop will use this square, and black will be able to break out in the middle of the board. So looking very nice for Magnus. Levon Aronian retreats his bishop. Black instantly castles. Magnus is hustling on the clock. Both sides have castled now, and I'm looking out for this move, getting rid of the defender of the center. Looking very good. I think I would choose black here already, I've got to say. Black just so solid.
Yeah, it's quite annoying. In fact, the pan-off is actually a game that it's usually open positions, lots of tactics, and you can get that a lot. But here, especially in this A6 line, which is why Krzysztof Sielecki actually in the Chessable course recommends this, because it's an offbeat line that is not played as much, the A6 early. Usually everything else you've seen, Bishop G4, you've seen taking, you've seen E6, you've seen all these other moves, but A6 is one that's not played as much, hence why Magnus played it, made, of course, Levon think here. And now we have a position where it's usually a little bit more closed now, and this being closed, this is not the nature of the pan-off here, especially if you're looking for more tactics and aggressive piece play. You're not getting that here. Black just seems to be 100% fine. We also have B6 in many cases to break up this pawn chain that white has. So it is kind of annoying here. There is still play. D5 is a little weak, even B7, but I think we need to start threatening and doing some things now. Maybe the bishop should have went back to E3 to release some of the pressure that is on the D4 pawn now.
Yeah. Magnus is really piling up the pressure on that central D4 pawn, currently even hinting at picking up one of the defenders. Is a bishop F3 and picking up that pawn a big threat? Does Levon need to handle it right now?
I think so, Tanya, especially because he's in a must-win situation. It might not be a winning threat for Black, but it is a threat to liquidate, to trade off pieces and get to safety for Magnus. For example, if Levon kicks this bishop, asks a question, bishop takes knight would happen, and actually here, if you want to play safe, you just take this pawn. You could even more ambitiously defend your knight. Levon's gone in a different direction, but what is this? He's put his knight on the rim. Is he really trying to come and trap this rook in the corner? The rook doesn't have too many safe squares, but he's abandoning his center. What is his idea? Bishop takes knight. Do you have to take with a pawn here? If you take with your bishop, you're simply a pawn down. This white pawn in the center drops, you're defended. I don't see enough compensation. Really surprising stuff.
Yeah, but he did that in the last game, getting his knight to the absolute edge. It didn't work out well. But, David, the big question is, what if white recaptures that bishop with his own pawn, hitting that knight in the center, and then Levon's creativity comes to mind with jumping his own knight to B6, hitting that rook on A8. Is that something that Levon's looking at?
Yeah, we'll find out. This move on the board, and Levon Aronian, he has the decision now. Will he capture back with a pawn? Yes, you kind of trap this rook. It's on a really... OK, he takes with the bishop. I was going to say, here, you do trap this black rook, kind of, but you have such an ugly structure here. These pawns will come back to bite you, to haunt you later on. He takes with the bishop, and he's going down a pawn. His idea is to trap this knight now defended by the bishop. His idea is to try and trap this rook, but I don't see it working out. The rook can simply move, or you can even start striking in the center. Looking good for Magnus.
Yeah, definitely looking good. No tricks, especially here for people that like tactics. No tricks in the position. That's just going to be tough. It's going to be very, very tough here, especially just giving up material. No real I mean, okay, you have slight compensation. The rook goes to A7 after knight B6, but a pawn is a pawn, and you're playing Magnus, and I'm down time. This doesn't look the greatest for what we want out of the opening for Levon.
This is so strange, Robert, what we've just seen right now. I mean, just down a pawn. What's going on?
Well, how else do you beat Magnus Carlsen? Nobody really has the answer to that question. So what Levon is trying to do, what a lot of top players do, is they would rather be down material as long as they have all the activity. And it's going to cost him. This central pawn is very important. The rest of his pawn structure may collapse after it, but at least he's going to trap that rook on the side of the board. That is his hope. That's his intention. But Magnus, I mean, he can just gobble on D4, and he will not pay a big price for it.
Yeah, we saw it in the last game as well. Magnus was happy to take some kind of strange strategic decisions in exchange for winning a pawn. Magnus was up a pawn for most of the previous game, and eventually he was able to convert to victory. It still takes a lot of skill, of course. Magnus is capable, but I wouldn't be surprised. Just grab the pawn now. I think he's just choosing, does he take this white pawn in the center with the black dark-squared bishop, or does he capture it with the knight? Spoiled for choice. He's got a couple of minutes extra on the clock. He's a point up in this match. And Levon Aronian, body language, not positive. He just doesn't look confident today after that tough start earlier on. Psychology is so important at the top level. And Levon just unable to get his type of position, unable to get the dynamism that he's been craving so far, that he knows can kind of be a weapon against Magnus.
The initiative in the first game that Levon had was really clear. You could see it that he sacrificed the pawn, but Magnus was behind development, the king was uncastled. But here it just looks like it's hard to see the compensation. Where is Lev's compensation if Magnus just gobbles a very healthy central pawn?
We'll have to find out.
Yeah.
What's going to happen. There we
Takes
go.
it with the bishop.
Interesting.
Yeah, takes with the bishop. That bishop very strong. I guess he wants to put some pressure both on white's queenside pawns, but also lining up against the white king. Maybe Levon's king will feel slightly uncomfortable due to the presence of this black bishop in the center. I like the look of it. I think it's good enough. And a pawn up, that's the most important thing.
But look at the eval bar. It seems to say that white is doing fine. So once again, the big question is, does that rook, forcing it to that a7 square, does that give white long-term compensation of forcing Magnus to essentially play without a rook for the next couple of moves? We've seen that happen. A big central break. Magnus wants to get that e-pawn going. What is Levon's next move that we're looking at here?
I think I like queen b3. Queen b3 or, yeah, b4 maybe. Okay, queen b3. Actually, c5 is hanging. That's actually what I wanted to play last move was queen b3 because it hit b7 and kind of d5 and maybe rook c to d1. But b4 actually is very strong. It cements the c5 pawn there, of course. Queen b3 is now a move we can play. And then rook c to d1 comfortably. And there's threats towards Magnus here. He has to be very accurate because, of course, we're threatening things like bishop e4 and maybe even bishop h6 in many cases too as well, especially if you find pawn e6 is going to allow the d6 square to be extremely weak. So if we take on e4 at some point, we'll put a bishop on d6. And I mean, yeah, you got double pawns, you're up to pawn, but you don't really feel that as black. There's definitely some holes in black's position here.
Yeah, beautiful pieces here, James. Knight and bishop just entrenched in the black camp. So Magnus has to be careful, that's for sure. First move that comes to my mind would be to throw this pawn forward, but you can't take back these types of pawn moves. For example, white will gain time against the black rook. Whoa, I see the evaluation bar drop.
What the heck happened there?
Tactics on f2, apparently.
Whoa.
Queen h4 somewhere.
What the heck is that?
Yeah, there's some tricks here.
There it is too. He played it on the board.
Wow, it's on the board. So this bishop move would actually be a huge blunder. Maybe the most natural move in the position. Yes, you hit the rook, but for example, after knight takes pawn, the rook has to recapture, the white queen attacked, and at the very end, king takes bishop would be met by a nasty double attack. Loose pieces drop off, this is a check, and the white bishop falls next move. So actually, white's most tempting move isn't possible. Levon has to trade off the knight in the center first. He does so, and now I'm assuming he's going to move his bishop. Which direction? Most likely this one, but on a bit of a loose square. At least he's doubled the black pawns, the front black pawn on e4, a bit of a target. And, OK, I'm assuming Magnus is going to move this rook, but he's paused. Is there something better? Will he sacrifice some material?
I think he should, because nobody likes to play with a rook imprisoned on a7. So he's going to give up his kingside rook by taking this pawn on b4. And the point is, after bishop takes on f8, the queen can even take back there, and the black knight is coming to d3 next. The c5 pawn is loose, the f2 pawn is under attack. And if you have to move your knight just to defend that pawn, then the black rook can escape back via a8. So I actually think that Magnus, he should give up the exchange here.
Wow, and look at our engine suggestion. It says that it's a great suggestion, but the only one that works for Magnus. Everything else, and Levon is doing fine. Knight b4, sacrificing that exchange, picking up that extra pawn. Magnus, going into the think, he's definitely on that path, and he does it. He does it. He doesn't like to play passive chess.
Jeez.
Yeah, these top players, when you give them only one move that's far stronger than all the others, more often than not, they do find it just by process of elimination. And here we do see bishop takes rook on the board. Magnus can take back this bishop with his queen, with his king, either way. And as Robert says, this knight is coming in for the win. This bishop actually is far superior to any of those two white rooks. That's why you can afford to give up the material. He even takes with the king, just keeping full control here. Beautiful move. And all of white's remaining pawns are weak. This one weak for later. And knight coming in, I don't see any reply to that one. Looking very, very strong for black right now.
Wow, Magnus just makes it look simple. It's so hard to play him in positions where, like, I mean, you think you have something, and then you know, as you see, he sacks the exchange here, and he actually has the two strong pawns. Now, even though they're double, but they are both defended, or at least e5 is defended. You can defend e4 by playing f5. A little risky there, but definitely a pawn that you can use, especially for knight to d3. Come back around, take the other pawn on c5 there. Queen defends the knight on d3 too as well. We're doing things with tempo, which is very strong here, doing things with tempo. So we need to move fast here. I mean, it has to be right now if we do anything. But the question is, what do we do right now? Queen to d2, knight d3, check, and take on c5. Doesn't work. Knight d3 is coming.
Yeah, and I don't think it's stopping. I think I'm actually even more impressed with the move king takes f8 than sacrificing the exchange, because you heard me say it. I thought he would take with the queen. That looked way more logical to me. But he says my queen might be needed in the attack. It's putting pressure on that knight that's on b6 with the c5 pawn being loose. It also jumped towards the king side all the way out in the diagonal. So king takes f8 is a very Magnus type of move. It was the best move, and I mean, just not easy to spot for most mere mortals.
Yeah, and Levon has to take a timeout. Not a move he wants to play, not a happy move, but he has to put his king in the corner. It feels like mission impossible at this point. It's like everything you try, Magnus has a reply in store. And now, again, we see the engine suggestions. Black has one move that's far stronger than all the others. The problem for Levon is that this move is the most obvious move in the position. Black's knight is about to jump into the center to an outpost. Black's bishop is anchored in the center. Black's knight is anchored in the center. And I can't see the white rooks fighting.
Yeah, if you pick up the pawn on b4 with your knight, sacrificing an exchange, you're definitely heading with that knight to that d3 square, attacking that weak pawn. And this is looking like big trouble. James, you mentioned when we see Levon stretching around, that is him flexing, but right now he's not feeling this.
Yeah, he's not feeling it. He took his glasses off, rubbing his eyes here. I mean, rubbing the hair. You can tell. Just stress. This is not the Levon that you like to see. When he's stretching and doing the neck thing and he stretches, that's usually when he's like comfortable. He's feeling good. And you see this a lot in the footage when he's winning or when he's feeling good, he has a good position. Here, it's not good. Wow, King G7, Rob?
I was actually thinking about this while you guys were talking. There was a tactic there that perhaps Magnus and Levon both overlooked. But if we actually analyze, I think the reason he didn't play knight d3 is that it looks like there's a pin along the d file. Rook c2. If you take on c5, I'm just going to take on c5. But the issue is that their bishop takes c5. White cannot afford to play rook takes c5 because knight takes f2 check. It's a fork to the king and the queen. And when the rook takes the knight, that rook was defending the queen. Black not just wins the queen, but wins the game. It is checkmate. So I wonder if Magnus just stopped his calculation and moved too early. I'm not entirely sure, but knight d3, if he had seen this follow-up, it was very natural.
Just wins on the spot, pretty much, Robert. Wow. And yeah, both players must have missed this for sure. This knight move would have won the game. But Magnus instead moves his king to a slightly safer square away from any potential checks. And I guess this gives Levon Aronian time to create some counterplay. The whole reason he put his king in the corner was to break this pin. So what could be more natural than stepping forward with the white f-pawn? Yes, you do allow the black pawn to step forward, creating an incredibly strong passed pawn. But if black's pawn does step to this square, the black knight at least can't jump in to the center anymore. So it's not one-way traffic, and that's a good sign for Levon Aronian. This game's still alive, and he very quickly does play f3. Will we see Magnus jump in with his knight now, one move too late, or the pawn step forward? I think those are the two main candidate moves. But still, I slightly prefer black, but yeah, missed opportunity.
And if Magnus does decide to step in with the knight, Levon Aronian could be the one who's thinking about sacrificing an exchange by capturing that central pawn, opening up the f-file. Is this one tempo too late going to count a lot?
It could do. Okay, he's moved his rook up one square, and Robert's idea, is it still in the air? Bishop takes pawn right now, setting that nasty trap. There's some tension along the d-file, the two queens staring off against each other indirectly. And it looks possible to me. There might be some tricks that white can try, however, in return. This one is getting complicated. This one is sharpening up. Levon with 4 minutes, Magnus with 5.
This move f3, I think, was a good one from Levon. He's not only trying to undermine the defense of that black knight on d3, trying to open up the f-file. The white rooks need lines to attack on, and if that pawn captures on e4, there is an open line towards the black king. So this is what Levon is banking on. That knight on b6 can be captured, but there's going to be a pin down the d-file, and thankfully for Levon, after knight f2 check, he has that second rook that can capture because the rook on d2 blocks along the d-file. You can't take the rook on f2, you lose your queen. So this would actually be a good situation for Levon when he needs to win the game.
Yep, this looks like the best shot for Levon Aronian right now. Magnus here would most likely block with his bishop, push a pawn. I still think black is solid enough, especially when a draw is a decent result, but at least he's complicated the issue here. Levon pretty much needs to take this pawn. Remember this trap. Rook takes bishop, doesn't win a piece. It actually loses the game to this knight fork. So Levon, of course, he'll spot this tactic, he'll spot this trick, and process of elimination. You pretty much have to take this pawn and hope for the best. But let's see what he's done. Okay, he does capture, and Magnus, I think, will now take that white knight off the board. It was too strong, trapping that black rook, so eliminate it. And the game goes on. Oof, this one getting tense. I thought Magnus would wrap it up quite quickly, but we're still going.
Got time too. I mean, he's up time. He's up about a minute and some change here, right? So better clock management from Levon here, and a position where, I mean, it's really playable for both sides. After this rook d2, I'm up the exchange. You have to remember that is some material, and it takes some accuracy. I can't play b6 or b5 yet that actually, covers that whole rank, the whole 7th rank there, because rook d2, rook takes, and maybe a rook d7. If we get these 3 moves in, we do have some serious counterplay ourselves.
Wow, yeah. This one, I'm just trying to work out what happens if black drops in a knight check.
Yeah, right.
That wasn't on my radar. I was too kind of carried away by looking at the white knight that's on prise right now. It's edible. You can take that white knight off the board, but there is a nasty check black can throw in.
And you've got to recapture that knight with the queenside rook, otherwise you just end up losing your queen.
Yeah, and there are consequences. Maybe we show this on the board. What Magnus is considering right now, because of the match situation, is can he force a draw? For example, does he flick in a knight check? After the rook takes this knight, he trades off the queens. White, if he takes the queen back, will lose his rook to the black bishop. This is on the board. Wow, so rook takes pawn pretty much guaranteed. This is the position we have. And here, okay, Levon takes back the black queen, and black is a pawn up. I don't think there's too much to worry about. This actually is the game position, sorry. And we do a quick count. It is 5 pawns against 4 pawns. This should be enough for Magnus to hold.
And the black rook is at long last going to be freed because the knight is booted out of b6, which means the b7 pawn will push forward. The rook can slide along the 7th rank over there. So I feel like this is going to be good news for Magnus Carlsen. He only needs a draw. He's up a pawn, and his rook will get some breathing room.
Yep, that's the key. The black rook, once it gets out, no problem pieces for black. Nothing much to worry about. Looks like a good kind of practical play, practical decision by Magnus. That could have been better, but why not get to this very safe position?
I mean, the only thing that it looks like Levon can try and do is somehow checkmate that king on h6. It's a faraway dream, but is that possible in some alternative universe?
Maybe. Against
Not
me,
against
he'd
Magnus.
probably find a checkmate, but...
Yeah, against Magnus, that's going to be very difficult. You need a lot of moves here, and these moves just don't seem right, especially with the knight where it is.
But it's clear, right, James, what he wants? He wants to just make sure that the rook doesn't come out into activity ever. So knight c8, sort of a last try to keep that rook out of the game?
Also attacks the bishop on c5 still, keeps that alive. Maybe push the pawns, g4, h4. Maybe start with h4, and then try to box him in as much as we can.
Yeah, we mentioned that black rook. It was about to finally come to life, but at the moment, at least, it's still a bit stuck. I really like this resourceful idea by Levon Aronian. He's so creative, even deep into the endgame. It's touching upon that point earlier. He doesn't solve things like most would in the endgame. He solves it with tricks, with tactics. And look at the evaluation bar creeping up slightly for white. Back in the middle now. That black rook still needs several moves. It needs to push pawns in front of it to break free. And, okay, just a pawn push himself, Levon Aronian. The white king maybe getting ready to join the action. This one's not over yet.
That's true. There is a mate. There is a
You
mate.
see it, James? I knew it. I knew it. You'd watch it.
You know me. You know I'm gonna find those checkmates. Okay. All right. You get a g4. You go h4, then g4, then just slowly walk the king up, and then g5, king h5, and rook h7 is mate. Now, of course, this is a long shot, but hey, what else do we have? I'm losing anyway. You know what I mean? Like I need to go for whatever I can. Take the chances while I can.
Yeah, draw is the same as a loss here for Levon Aronian. So if he just needed a draw, he would maybe move his rook back, win a pawn with the white knight, trade everything off, and head into a rook endgame. But that's not sufficient. Okay, here he's trying to just block up Black's play. Black's pawn pushes on the queen side. Magnus sliding across with his own rook. You've got to go for checkmate. It's now or never.
There's nothing else to do.
It's really the only way. You've got to move that bishop and push the b pawn. While he's doing it, he is coming with his king forward. We might just see a mating net on the king side, but it does feel a little too slow.
Yeah, it takes at least 3 or 4 moves to set up to push these pawns forward, trap that black king. How does Magnus unravel in the meantime? The problem for Magnus is that if he moves his bishop, he would love to push this pawn forward to get his rook out, but the pawn is needed to defend this piece. If he moves his bishop, which he has just done, I was going to say the knight could get out. He's moved it in the right direction. If he moved it to the other diagonal, the white knight springs back, and suddenly ideas against this black king. But it's still trapped. Look how dominant this bishop is over the white knight, cutting across this diagonal, taking away escape squares. bishops over knights. That's what they say in endgames.
Yeah, long-range piece here. Bishop covering many important squares. And finally, at long last, the rook is free. And once the rook is out, that should eliminate most of Levon Aronian's winning chances. But he's still trying to get that checkmating net. He hears you, James. He's saying, oh, if I can make that king, I have to go for it. I need a victory in this game. But Magnus is no fool. He is not just going to allow those pawns to walk up the board and deliver a checkmate. He first brings his rook up. He can then pin the pawn if the king goes up to the third rank. So I feel like Magnus has this one under control.
Yeah, this is a key moment. If he doesn't pin this white pawn, if the white pawn steps forward, definite threats on the board. But there we go.
That's it.
Yeah, you also have bishop e1 here from Magnus, so we have to watch ourselves. I mean, the knight is a short-range piece versus a long-range piece being the bishop. It is it's very, very difficult to make anything happen. I mean, what do you even shoot? You might have to move the king. Is this just all draw now?
You pick up that knight and put it on f6, and that's 1-0.
Or d5 or anywhere near that black king for the white knight, and you might even win with white. But the white knight's so far away, it takes 3-4 moves. By that time, black has gobbled up all of your pawns. Under 1 minute for Levon Aronian. Yeah. I think he's realizing that he's just 1 or 2 moves too short. Too slow.
Tough.
Yeah.
Brilliant play from Magnus once again. I mean, just playing brilliant, precise. I mean, the great Magnus, first day just until today, 100%, 180 there. He's just playing much better. Every day he got better from the first day to now. We see a very different Magnus right now. He's in the zone. Bishop e1's coming. We're up a pawn. I mean, no mate. The knight is on a7, so far away from any action. It takes at least 2-3 moves, and we don't have another 2-3 moves. We can't allow bishop e1 and rook takes g3 or bishop g3. King g4 runs into bishop e1 immediately, and it's very, very hard to play anything here. 9 seconds.
Yeah. Oof. Dropping down under 5 seconds now. Levon Aronian, he needs to move. He needs to hope. Just move that king. Do something. And what has he done? Retreats the whole way.
Rook. Yeah, that doesn't feel right. But you had to stop this big threat that you were pointing out of the bishop sliding to e1, attacking the g3 pawn.
It's the only way to keep the game going, right? There was a look of resignation on his face. He kind of wanted to just give up the match, but he has to play on a few more moves. But Magnus deserves a lot of credit. He's well-nourished after all those meals that he's had on stream now, and I think that he is ready to compete, and he will have Hikaru Nakamura up next. It's only a matter of a few moves that he'll ice this one, take it through to the next matchup. But Magnus, he really played a great match, as James was saying.
Yeah, and Hikaru at this point knows it's nearly definitely Magnus that he'll face in the next round. So he'll be doing his preparation. He'll be watching this game with serious interest. But
Levon looking very dejected there, David. He's just shaking his head. It's kind of hard to even point out where the match went all wrong for Levon. Magnus just made it look so easy.
Yep, that's the top players in the world for you. Levon, he hasn't made any blunders at all, just tiny little small details here and there. And that's the margin at this level. Poor Levon, I feel for him. So close. Against anyone else, he would have had great chances today.
Absolutely.
Yeah, unfortunately, Magnus too strong, and I'm expecting him to either get that black king off the edge of the board that removes any chances of checkmate, or to relocate that black bishop. You can still target some of white's pawns near the king if you find the right squares, the right diagonals. So what will Magnus choose? Plenty of choice here. He can also go hunting with his rook for that white central pawn, for the white pawn on the edge of the board. But, OK, he's retreating his bishop. Not the most accurate move, the engine thinks, but still should be more than sufficient for the required draw. They do say a good horse never jumps as high as they have to. So at this level, if they only need a draw, the players know how to lock it down.
I didn't know you were an equestrian, but right now I think that you see Magnus, he's just making these precise moves because he doesn't want to give Levon any hope here, but both players are under a minute, and that's when mistakes do happen. If that knight starts hopping around, there could be a fork that is overlooked, and the black king isn't fully out of danger just yet.
Nice move there from Levon, maybe missed by Magnus. White holds all the pawns, and suddenly the white knight jumping back. Big threat. Black's central pawn under fire.
Yeah, and the bishop still isn't attacking that kingside pawn anywhere, and you've got to find a way, and he says, I'm going to get my king to safety. Levon immediately grabs, and it's a big blunder because you lose the g3 pawn and you lose the game.
Yep, that's a wrap.
He tricked him. He's like, oh no, my pawn, Eric Rosen style. Take that pawn. The game ends because through that knight is the g3 pawn. Levon Aronian, he looks at his position, it's hopeless. The game is over.
Yeah. Wow, Levon Aronian resigns. There's no way to save this position after the G3 pawn falls. The game is over. Magnus Carlsen wins his match 2-0 to Levon Aronian. After that first day disaster, Magnus does look unstoppable. What a power performance today by Magnus. And we see there Levon not happy with his play. He is looking dejected there. It just looked like he never got things going. A critical big fight. Magnus, what a power pack performance. It's time for our Lisoveta learning points.
And today's learning point is about not being materialistic, to do a scan of the board and to check maybe sometimes there will be more important priorities than saving material. In this position, Magnus as black is a pawn up against Levon Aronian. His rook was under fire. Most of us, myself included, would have been inclined to simply move this rook out the way. However, white would now have time to simply defend the queenside pawns, and the position is very balanced. White has activity because this black rook is trapped. However, Magnus, he'd seen deeper into the position. He realized that this black rook wasn't doing anything anyway. He saw it was more important to grab a pawn, and after the dust cleared, we saw this position. The black knight is coming in. This black bishop is worth far more than the white rooks, and he later went on to wrap up the game. Just to show the final position, it was here. The black bishop was the one, indeed, doing the work after it slid back. X-ray vision against this pawn through the white knight, and next move, rook takes pawn, will checkmate or will win material. Nice game by Magnus Carlsen.
Very nice indeed. Alert from start to the end. And that means that this is our scoreline. Magnus Carlsen with a dominating performance against Levon Aronian, winning 2 games, not just the score, but also the performance that he had over the board, just his style of play today. There was no chance for Levon Aronian. And that means that we have set ourselves up for the most anticipated match. It will be Magnus Carlsen taking on Hikaru Nakamura on the other side of this Twitch break.
It's time to take control of your journey towards chess mastery. Magnus Carlsen introduces Chessable, the definitive solution for studying chess. Move Trainer uses the science of spaced repetition to identify your strengths and eliminate your weaknesses. There's no need to set up a board, remember which page you're on, or keep track of all the moves you miss. Move Trainer empowers you to go from the opening to the end game with confidence. It's a seamless, effective, and fun way to study chess. Choose from one of the largest online chess libraries in the world, with hundreds of titles ranging from classic books through to our exclusive Chessable courses, including over 100 free courses. Get expert insights from International Master John Bartholomew, Grandmaster Sam Shankland, International Master Christoph Sulecki, Grandmaster Simon Williams, World Champion Magnus Carlsen, and hundreds of other instructors. Get started now and join our growing community of over 100,000 chess enthusiasts at chessable.com. Chessable, take control.
The partner of the Champions Chess Tour and Chess.com. WorldQuant is a global firm in the field of quantitative asset management. If you don't know what that is, it's the job of building complex mathematical models that seek to identify market inefficiency. For 2023, WorldQuant Brain is bringing together its International Quant Championship and the award-winning Champions Chess Tour to hunt down the next generation of quant finance specialists.
It sounds very exciting. You put your skills in practice in a case competition where you get a real challenge. And I signed up.
World Quant is seeking new talent and new energy, and it's looking at the world of chess to help. Because nobody knows how to analyze a position better than a chess player, right? No quant experience? No problem. So, do you think you have what it takes to compete in the International Quant Championship? Sign up and be the next quant champion.
Hikaru Nakamura, he cannot lose, and he has to win either this one or the next one.
There we go, we have it. Gary the G-pawn makes an appearance. G5, he's going for Magnus's king.
The bar is inching up for Magnus Carlsen with the white pieces. What's happening?
Can the black rook make headway against the lone white king?
Is Hikaru winning?
You have more distance from the king, so if the king goes to d3, you see the bar go back to equal. So
react Hikaru as well.
Oh my gosh, Magnus Carlsen should be able to hold.
There we have it. Game 3 is a draw.
Oh, and that move is almost as nice as that trophy. Gives that pawn where 2 white pieces can take it. That is beautiful tactical awareness from Magnus Carlsen. He is really earning this championship.
It's over. We have a winner. Magnus Carlsen takes it. He wins the Everything's Masters.
The fans love it, commentators love it, we all love to watch this matchup. The two have so much history. Clearly the two best players in the world when it comes to speed chess and chess in general. There we see their head-to-head. They've had some epic clashes in speed chess over the last year. Hikaru Nakamura with 20 wins and Magnus Carlsen with 29 wins. Last time they played was the Everything's Finals. That one, David, Magnus took it away. What are you expecting?
Yeah, Magnus took it, but the margins were small. Their previous match earlier in the tournament was down in Armageddon, and Magnus had those result odds at the end there. But I'm expecting this one to be equally close. I do think Armageddon is the most likely. It's just the stakes are so high. Will the players risk it in the first 2 games? I'm not sure. But either way, there will be drama, and there will be a winner.
Yeah. James, do you think Hikaru's been watching the action that's just happened?
Absolutely been watching everything in it. Of course, and he always says, I literally don't care, right? But of course, it's going to be, he does care, and it is going to be a heavyweight matchup. People take off work wherever you are around the globe to watch when Hikaru and Magnus play. Hundreds of thousands of people, actually, 100,000 plus. Every time they play, it's the biggest event, almost as big as the World Championship.
Oh my God. And what do you think is the reason for that? Why is this always such an epic fight, Robert?
Well, you have the retired chess player, the biggest chess streamer on the planet, against the best chess player on the planet. So, of course, we're joking about Hikaru being retired. He literally doesn't care, as you see on the screen in front of you. But this is a heavyweight matchup, and it's in the loser's bracket.
Oh my God. And Robert, you did mention it on day one. You predicted this, that in the final, we will not have a repeat of the Everything's Masters. But this is the second best thing that could have happened. We do love to watch these two beasts go at it. It is hard to pick a favorite. But David, how hard is it today?
It's hard. Should we make predictions?
Oh, we got to do it.
Let's do it.
We got to do it.
I'll say Nakamura.
Ooh, hot take.
I'm going with Hikaru.
Wow, I'm surprised. I think the loser's run continues for Magnus. He lost in the first round to Artemiev. I think he keeps winning since then.
Yeah, I've got to agree with you, Robert. He's just been on fire, Magnus Carlsen, after losing to Artemiev. He's won match after match and then beating Wesley yesterday in style and a dominating performance today against Magnus. But Hikaru there on the screen, he doesn't care. He almost looks like he's just woken up.
Yeah, he just took a nap. He just woke up right there in the chair. You can tell. Absolutely. And he got the shirt, literally doesn't care. Look at that. Little nap.
Another nap.
Get some sleep.
He's doing that Jedi mind trick, just resting his eyes, so he's fully focused for the fight ahead.
I'm not sleeping, you're sleeping.
Wow.
Wow. Magnus practicing his Artemiev, magic trick.
He's just disappeared right now. Magnus Carlsen, we are waiting for him to return to that secret lab chair. What do you think he's doing? What's the secret preparation right now?
Yeah, if I knew how Magnus Carlsen prepared, I think that I would be a much better chess player. So I have no idea. I think he's probably eating some food, snacking a little bit, and next thing you know, he's going to be facing off against Hikaru. He won't have much time to do anything but play the game.
Yeah. Gotta love that food gambit. But the big question is, what are their strengths and weaknesses? David, what does Hikaru need to do to win this one, and where will Magnus strike?
So Hikaru just needs to stay in there. He knows that actually, if the clock does tick down, he's got decent chances. He's one of the fastest hands out there in speed chess, online chess. He's got so much history, so much success. Magnus, I think the opening is important for him, but also if he can get those grindy endgames, put Hikaru on the back foot continuously throughout the 2, potentially 3 games if there's Armageddon, then he'll have his chances. But yeah, we're getting ready to start going in a couple
I
minutes.
love it when this clock starts ticking. It really sets the tone for the game that's about to start. What a big matchup. And there we see Hikaru still waiting. Do you think he's getting a little impatient there? Oh no, he's just yawning.
It's quite early in the US, right?
And you know what it is, actually? Let me see what time it is. Yeah, it's like noon. In fact, well, he's in Florida, so it's a little bit different. Eastern time is 11. Are you
It's noon, so it's past noon there for him, so he shouldn't be tired.
Yeah. And did you see that? Where did Magnus just suddenly appear from?
Yeah.
Nobody knows.
He lost to Artemiev, now he learns. That's what I'm saying, you don't lose, you learn.
I love it. Magnus Carlsen and Hikaru Nakamura will be starting in just a few moments. A best of 2. There is no margin for error. If it ends in a tie, we will have the Armageddon. When these two play, it goes down to the wire. Is that what we're expecting today? Will there be an Armageddon?
Cool. You know what? I don't think there's going to be an Armageddon. It's only 2 games, so I mean, hey, look, one guy or one of these guys winning the draw, I think is not going down Armageddon. It is going to be something crazy today. That's what we're looking for. That's what the fans want to see, right? But the fans do want to see Armageddon 2 as well, so it's just going to be a shakeup here. I see a tactical wizardry and a resourcefulness from Hikaru, but then also Magnus is very slow, calm, but also can be tactical, sees everything, universal style. So it's very, very strong chess here.
Yeah, we know you all of you out there love these two players. Tell us in chat who are you rooting for, and keep those selfies coming using the hashtag ChessChamps. And Hikaru starts with the white pieces. 1e4, and we've got a Kara again. This time, David, are you more surprised?
I'm even more surprised, I've got to say. I thought Magnus would revert to maybe a different opening strategy. Nakamura, for sure, would have been watching that clash against Aronian that Magnus had a few minutes ago, so he would have known the Kara-Khan is coming in. Nakamura, he had this on a previous day, if I'm not mistaken, against Vladimir Fedoseev. The queens are off early on, and James, I saw your face react to that one.
Yeah, we got to focus on that. We got to get our camera on James right now.
This is ridiculous, bro. Don't nobody want to watch this. Like, everybody falling asleep. Man, people took off work to watch this. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I know what you mean, but I also see this battle between Charizard and Blastoise. Look at their colors. They are the evolved form of the game. And they say, let's get down to the end game. Hikaru doesn't want to take risks against Magnus. He just watched what he did to Levon Aronian. He watched what he did yesterday to Wesley So. Let's remember Hikaru Nakamura's yesterday. He lost 2.5 to half to Fabian Caruana. So after that result, I think he wants stability in the first game.
Stability in the first game, but in this match format, you get only one white. When Magnus will play for white, he will be more aggressive. Going into an Armageddon, is that a math strategy? Is that what Hikaru is hoping for? 2 peaceful draws and out there in the Armageddon.
Yeah, I think he wants Armageddon because in rapid time controls, Magnus is the stronger player between the two. We saw their head-to-head record. 9 more wins, if I'm remembering correctly, for Magnus Carlsen. So look at the early stage of this game. It's just development. Nothing major has happened just yet, but I think that is sort of an opening win. He's won this opening battle for Magnus Carlsen.
Yep, and he's caused the first surprise. Firstly, the Kara-Khan. Magnus, it's clearly his opening of the day, but also just to play so quickly into this endgame. The queens are off. We'll call it a queenless middle game, just for the benefit of the doubt, just because it's still exciting. What's Magnus up to there? Closing the blinds. Chess players prefer the dark. They're night owls. And yeah, Magnus, he's caused the first opening surprise. I do expect him to be extremely well prepared. You don't take the queens off unless you know exactly what you're doing here as black. Otherwise, you just get a prospectless position. You just get slightly worse, slightly cramped, white structure, very nice. I do expect Magnus to develop quickly, to go for this white king that is stuck in the center, at least temporarily.
Well, the good news for white is that one of the pieces, either the knight or the bishop, can hop onto that d3 square in front of the knight to just block that d-file to make sure that the pin is not very dangerous. So things still under control. I like that Hikaru's taken control of the long diagonal. I see that eval bar, though. It does inch towards black. Why is there this slight nag in the position for black?
I'm confused too. It looks like white is super solid. Black's doing fine, of course, too, but I would have assumed that this is a totally level position with best play. Is there something direct Has move order been important here? I didn't see a knockout blow.
Well, Magnus tries to pin this knight on d2, and I think one of the major issues for white is that you have to block this pin. He does it with his own knight, but that light square bishop is now blocked by the knight that just blocked the black rook. So black's pieces more naturally developed. c5 is a great choice. He vacates the c6 square for his knight, and I think the development, it's a win for Magnus. I really like how his pieces are getting out of there. Hikaru's pieces are kind of awkward at the moment.
Yeah, this is actually gross, to say the least, right? That's my favorite word to use here when you're talking about positions here. And I mean, the reason being practical, of course, c5 was an excellent move. My bishops are out. Okay, if you want to take on f6, cool. Give me the bishop here. I'll take it all day. I'm castled. You're not. We're just going through, like, things in the position. I'm castled. You're not. My bishops are developed. Yours aren't really. Okay, maybe the bishop on b2. Your knight's kind of strange, right? c4, it could be possible, especially if you move the knight from d2. You got to move your king again after I've already made you move your king in that castle. My knight's going to go to the natural square c6, right? And then I can also maybe even double the rooks. I just have natural piece placement, natural piece development, and etc. And black actually just seems to be favored here in practical sense.
Yeah, white is just stuck, completely stuck. I just don't see any kind of productive move right now. Of course, you would love to get these two out the way. You'd love to move your king as well, but where do you put it? If you move your king forward, you block this bishop even further. If you move your king to the side, your rooks will never be connected and never get into the game. And meanwhile, obvious what black's plan is, as both of you mentioned there. The knight is coming actually into a nice central square, potentially. Hikaru, it feels like he's messed up his move order somewhat, and it's actually white on the defensive. Surprising. Normally here we would be talking about a white safety, white advantage even, but it's the other way around.
Yeah, I don't like this for Hikaru. I think it's also stylistically not what you should do against Magnus. It looks like he was playing, I don't want to say for a draw, I think he was just trying to get a position, but the position that he has received is not good. His pieces are not harmonious, his rooks are not connected and will not be for the foreseeable future, and black's development, on the other hand, is that straightforward as we've been discussing. So I really don't like the look this for Hikaru on the board, but also on the clock. He's several minutes behind in the early stages.
Yeah, I'm really surprised. I mean, Magnus playing with the black pieces, starts with the Caro, makes two moves with that C pawn, and here we are talking about it being better for Magnus. That feels like some sort of a wizardry. It's not normal. He's playing Hikaru Nakamura, one of the best in the world, and it's hard to point out where white went wrong.
Yeah, I think the opening choice, in fact, they're absolutely just going for the queen trade. He usually, when I saw knight f3, I'm like, oh, he's going to go for the two knights variation, because he does that a lot, especially in Title Tuesday against Hikaru Khan. I've seen many excellent two knights games from him. Knight f3 after d5, he goes knight c3. You go into the two knights Hikaru Khan, a favorite of Bobby Fischer's as well. And, I mean, I've seen him do that with great success against very strong players. But he went with the d3 line, and then after takes, and now we're in this position, right?
Do you think that solid approach, Robert, is backfiring a little bit for Hikaru here?
Well, he started solidly, but his last move is anything but solid. He pushed his pawn forward to f4 to block the diagonal that the dark square bishop is on for black. But when you push pawns forward, you leave squares behind. The g4 square, a knight can hop into there at some point soon. The e4 pawn is a little bit loose. So I feel like f4, it makes sense to block that bishop to gain some space for white, but also will cause some long-term problems.
Yeah, you don't take that one back anytime soon. Magnus still has the very simple idea in the near future. I'm not sure whether immediately or in the next few moves of just plonking a knight in the center. Still difficult questions for Nakamura ahead. If he gets time, of course, he would love to solidify this pawn chain, this nice little trio here, but weaknesses on the squares around them. Definitely still white on the defensive. And meanwhile, I did get distracted for a second. I saw some of the Twitch comments about Blastoise versus Charizard. Water type does beat fire type. So Magnus, is he the favorite here?
That's what I said from the beginning. That's why I use those Pokemon. Okay. It's not just, fire and ice. We see the red and the blue. Come on, it was intentional.
It was intentional. Nice.
That's right.
Which Pokemon did Magnus say last tournament was his favorite? You asked him, right, Robert? Did he say?
Psyduck, I want to say.
Yeah.
Psyduck, wow.
Yeah, I think that was Kaya's Pokemon as well.
Yes, it was.
Yeah.
Psyduck.
Water, psychic type. Yeah, I can see that from Magnus.
C6 and G3, we have those moves.
You called it, David. He is trying to get that bishop out, but then creating these light squared weaknesses. How quickly can Magnus take advantage of that G4 square? Is it time to pounce on it already?
It feels that way. If Hikaru does get a few more moves, if white's light squared bishop gets out the way, if the white king steps forward to a safer square and the rooks connect, then all the opening problems have gone for Hikaru Nakamura. And actually, if anything, I would say momentum white, because black's bishop on the edge of the board, the dark squared bishop, is extremely stuck. You might need to take a step back with that, but then you lose time. So it does feel like now or not at all for Magnus if he wants to claim the opening advantage. Any ideas, James, Robert?
What you got, Robert?
We both looked at each other like, oh, you go. Well, I do want to point out that this pawn on c5, the black pawn there, is under attack. It has been under attack. And right now, because the pawn on f4 got a second defender, I think white is about to snap it off the board. So perhaps black has to invest some of his own time to defend it. But that's not what you want if you are Magnus. We were just talking about how if Hikaru finishes development, he can fianchetto his light square bishop, get his king off the first rank. At long last, the rooks will get connected. So I do think that Magnus, he wants to operate quickly, and he does. He pushes that pawn forward.
That is a pawn sacrifice. White can snap it up with his own pawn. Don't pick it up with the knight, because then the other central pawn gets weak. But wow, is Hikaru going to accept this?
Yeah, if you take with the knight, just to put your move on the board there, Tanya, this looks pretty good for black. This knight now threatens a bunch of things, including a nasty knight fork on f2. I think he has to accept it. That is the answer. I don't think you really want to move your knight out the way. It does feel super risky to allow this pin to... Well, it's going to lead to bad consequences, simply. I do see checks in the immediate future for black, and this knight might even get trapped later on. So you simply have to accept this gift. And the question here for Magnus is how to compensate for the temporary pawn deficit. These, of course, are weak pawns on the queen side. Magnus, at some point, will simply go for them. But does he go for them immediately, or is there something even stronger? Not sure.
Maybe something like rook a to c8. We've seen this a lot from him, and you actually learn a lot from watching these guys. It's almost like free lessons in a way. Is what I always like to tell the chat. Like, watch and try to learn from every game that you see from these players here. I mean, he sacrifices the pawn, you take with the pawn, and then you just follow up. Say, hey, this is long term. You still got to move your king. You have to finish your development. My development is completed, says black, and you have a weak pawn, and I also am attacking the pawn on c4. I mean, I can move my knight to a5, increase the pressure. I think it's an excellent choice here for Magnus.
Yeah.
I love it. We've seen a sacrifice right out of the opening in every single game today. That's the mood the players are in.
And this is kind of identical to what Magnus did against Levon. He gave up his c-pawn and doubled his opponent's c-pawn, isolated them. So Magnus, he just did this an hour ago, let's say. He's doing it again. And Hikaru, he's stuck. He has to take this pawn. I don't think he has another option than to take with his b3 pawn.
Yeah, and it was man versus curtain there for a moment. It looks like the curtain won. Magnus gave up and came back to the board. But meanwhile, yeah, he goes immediately for that pawn. Hikaru realizes process of elimination again. He had to capture on the c4 square with his own pawn. But now, full of weaknesses, full of holes, the white position. If you look at the white half of the board, the first 4 ranks, everything's very loose there.
Yeah.
And I do fear for Hikaru if he doesn't survive the next few moves. We mentioned it earlier. Magnus needed something there and then. He found something interesting, and now it's Hikaru that needs a defense here and now. And I don't see it. If the pawn is just taken back, then long-term white is suffering. He'll have those fractured pawns on the queen side. Yeah, really nice play by Magnus, I've got to say.
This is ugly. I don't like this for white. My king is like right there. You feel another rook coming to the file there. I mean, you need some chemistry between the pieces. Like, they need to be developed nicely. Like, if the bishop was on g2, but then c4 is hanging. Like, there's so many things. It just feels very wrong here from the white side. There's problems that need to be solved in white's position.
Yeah, I wonder if you just step your extra pawn forward. That white c-pawn is going to be doomed anyway, the foremost c-pawn. So why not step it forward? At least hope to survive, live another day. And at least ask Magnus, how are you going to continue with your initiative? But I don't like it either. 8 minutes on the clock for Hikaru. He's been caught out in the opening with white. Not a fast start for him.
Opening more files will not be good for Hikaru. His king is stuck in the center. Black will have multiple rooks in that area of the board. The white rooks are not connected. He pushes his e-pawn. He's attacking a knight, so a very direct approach from Hikaru. That knight should just move away. It can hop forward into the g4 square, but it might get trapped. So be careful when you decide to go for an attack for a fork of your own, because if your knight wanders too far, let's say after knight g4, white plays king e2, and black makes some random move, I don't know, a6, something on the queen side, h3 traps that knight in its place.
Yeah. You could even take on c4 and still get trapped. So it's a very tricky position. And knight g4 is so tempting because you're jumping in with the knight, but Magnus calculates and navigates. He does fall back. One of those things, he only retreats to go forward next.
Yeah, if he gets time, he might even come to b6 with his knight and capture with the knight on c4. But okay, Hikaru stops that. He keeps his pawn alive, his extra pawn. I don't think it's going to live for much longer. You can go after it with your rook, and it will eventually fall, or it should eventually fall. But he might continue clinging on for dear life. Bishop to a3.
I was thinking that same thing. Bishop a3. This is a very aggressive pawn structure. And the pawns, you got the nice wall over here, right? Pawns on the king side, and then the c5 pawn you actually can defend. I mean, weirdly enough, I am just holding. I mean, you can't really get everything yet. My knight is holding it. Maybe if I can get bishop g2 in, and then, but where does the king go is the question. Maybe king c1. You are on that diagonal with the h6, c1 diagonal. Yeah. Still things to answer, but I mean, it's looking a little bit better. Yeah. Looking a little bit better for white.
White's won Connect 4 at least. That's a small victory.
That's right.
You mentioned Connect 4, and I want to ask you guys, is there an idea in the air for actually Magnus to strike with g5, opening up that bishop? You don't have f5 in the air. Is that something that Magnus is thinking about in the position?
Absolutely. Why not? You want to open up the position on your own terms. So g5, it might initiate a pawn break that could be beneficial. But Hikaru brings his bishop. This is blocking with your face, James.
100% face block is premium. Wow. Bishop d4 for the score. Look at all these pieces on the file. Now, what he's saying is, I'm going to play c3 and lock it down, clown. He's going to put it right there in the center of the board. And that's a very strange structure. David, put pawn c3 on the board just to show how strange.
Yeah, what is going on that d file?
Right? Yeah. Like a random move here or something like a6 again, and then let me look at this structure. You know, don't try this at home, okay, guys? No, don't try this at home, right? But it is actually harmonious in a way. The pieces all do something. They're all kind of coordinating here, and then we have to figure out how to slowly untangle this. But I mean, there are pawn breaks, which Robert Hess always talks about. Pawn breaks control the game. There's b6, there's f6, there's g5.
I want g5.
You have to be, yeah, exactly. G5.
I want it. I know you'll be happy with it, James. We need g5 on the board.
You want this one, Tanya, just to break down this structure. No more next four.
The bad part doesn't hate it. That's the good news.
Right, right. G5 is strong. I like it. I'm a big fan of that stuff. And it does break that pawn structure up, like you talked about.
It really does. And I think Hikaru, that's the type of move he would hate to face right now, especially as the clocks tick down. If one pawn disappears, it's likely the whole edifice, the whole chain will fall later in the game. So I like that. I also like chipping away at the other pawns on the queen side. Magnus spoiled for choice, but he is a pawn down. And again, it's that theme we mentioned earlier today. The longer that kind of doesn't clarify itself, the longer you can't gain your pawn back, the more you might sweat later in the game.
But I really like James's point, because something we as commentators often do is we suggest moves, and James mentioned 3 different pawn breaks. He said pawn to b6, pawn to f6, pawn to g5. So if you're analyzing this right now, look at all those pawn breaks to see which one is best. Magnus chooses b6, f6. There's a valid reason for that as well. And I like the fact that he's playing on the queen side, because white is unprepared to meet knights hopping forward. The bishop on d4, the rook just eyes it from d8. So I like the initiative that black is building here, and there's a lot of pressure aimed towards white's camp.
Yeah, it just feels like Hikaru is a lot behind in development. The king not feeling very safe on that d file. You've got 3 minor pieces, well now 2, but still all of Magnus's army just perfectly placed to target that white king. On the clock as well, Magnus Carlsen ahead by 2 minutes. How tricky will this be for Hikaru to defend? He is one of the most resourceful players ever.
That's the thing. Earlier, you asked about strengths, weaknesses. Defense is one of Hikaru's main fortes in chess. He just never gets flustered, even when his back's against the wall, even when he's forced to retreat pieces like he's just done with his bishop. He's still confident that he can unravel later on and kind of work his magic against the opponent. The problem is, when you're facing a super strong opponent like Magnus, they will not back down. Every move will arrive with a threat, and if you just slip once, it might be game over. Magnus's last move, I'm not sure exactly what it does, but it does slightly improve black's light-squared bishop. I think he's just trying to tie down white's light-squared bishop, its counterpart, to the defense of these knights in the center. Look at that, the 2 black rooks, so many targets on these open lines. More than enough compensation, but is it enough to win? I think that's the question for Magnus Carlsen.
One huge problem is that psychologically, it's very difficult for top players to give away a bishop for a knight. But at some point soon, maybe that moment is now, Hikaru will have to take that knight on b6. Just as I was saying, he does it because that knight was ready to hop forward and into the white territory. So that was a great decision by Hikaru. And maybe on Magnus, he moved his light square bishop. He should have hopped his knight forward first.
Yeah, and suddenly Hikaru has at least one active piece. This white rook that's just shuffled across to the semi-open file is attacking black's lone remaining pawn on that left flank on the queen side. So Hikaru, he's being greedy. He's one pawn up. He wants to go for a second, but why not? Everything else seems to be holding together for now. And Tanya's idea from earlier, I think it might appear shortly. Black, the only problem piece in the position is that dark square bishop, so you need to break it out of jail, break it out of prison. And if you get it active, the two black bishops might just win the game. So I'm looking out for Magnus to do that shortly. I'm not sure whether it's now or later, but he needs something. He needs to keep pedaling. It's like on a bike. If you stop pedaling, you might fall off and you're a pawn down. That's the case here.
I'm actually trying to figure out what is the move for black? Do you play rook b8 or rook c6? Rook b8 is very passive, it seems like. I am down a pawn. I'm not really trying to be passive. Rook to c6 defends it, but then maybe it's hit with bishop to g2. Oh, you know what? Oh, my goodness. There might be rook c2 there.
Let's show that, James.
Wow.
Rook c6, you just want to defend your pawn first and foremost. Why not? But after the bishop moves, suddenly tricks in the air. Yes, your rook is attacked, but you can move it out of the way. And I guess the question here, after bishop takes knight, this is the trick. You sacrificed a rook, you've gained a knight. Next, you gain, maybe not this square. I'm not sure which square is best for white. Let's say this one. But at the very end, the dust clears. It's level material. Maybe draw with best play, but this black bishop still a sad piece.
Gross.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yes.
Gross is the word.
It's a good variation, but so maybe looking at that, which is what Magnus is calculating, he might play in the starting position the move e6. That bishop needs to see the light of day, and it can go back through f8. It costs him a second pawn. The rook can take the pawn on b6, but we know Magnus. He loves active pieces, and here his bishop comes back into the game.
It comes back into the game, and it will use this diagonal. I'm not sure which square, but it will use this diagonal later on to exert its influence. Yeah, I still like it. White is tied down, this rook not participating, so temporarily at least, Magnus is playing with an extra piece. So despite the two-pawn deficit, definite compensation. Magnus now in the tank, dropping below Nakamura for the first time in this game, really. And anything could still happen. Yes, the evaluation bar slightly prefers black. I slightly prefer black, but I could see this turning around. Some of the variation we showed there, actually, white, very, very safe, and still material up. Magnus looking away from the screen for a second there, calculating something. James, calculation over everything. That was his calculation face.
That's right. Calculation over everything. I like it, Magnus. Knight c4. What is this? Takes.
Channeling your inner Nakamura there. Takes. And the knights are off. But a pawn, another pawn drops off the board. 2-pawn advantage for Nakamura.
That's crazy. The eval bar is not even moving. Like, okay, barely moving down 2 pawns. I guess he's getting one back. That's some initiative. Interesting.
Yeah, bishop pair often compensates for 1 pawn, so if Magnus can get one of the pawns back, he will still have long-term compensation. Nakamura, I still don't like where his king is placed. The queens are off the board, but the white king's still sweating, feeling uncomfortable.
Yeah, and that rook on the other edge of the board, the h1 rook, far away from play. The bishop not developed. A lot of compensation, and Magnus does have the bishop pair. Hikaru doesn't even pretend to defend that a2 pawn. He says, I need to get my pieces into the game. Next, he wants to push that king 1 square ahead, perhaps, and just bring his other rook into the game. Try and double up on the open B line.
Yeah, it's important to bring that rook into the game because not just about the material. White temporarily 2 pawns up. Black, Magnus, he can take this pawn on a2 right now to cut that deficit in half. But the point is that when white gets that coronation, that 1 extra pawn will be felt. If he got passive there, if Hikaru decided to bring his rook back and defend, he would not have had his pieces in the game. So I really like this decision from Hikaru. I don't think Magnus is in big trouble. But David, as you were just indicating before, the longer the game goes where one side is down material and the more coordinated the pieces become, that could be a long-term issue for Magnus all of a sudden.
Yeah, for sure, at least psychologically. And we can tell that on the clock times. Magnus is feeling the pressure, the burden to do something, to win pawns back, to maybe clarify the tension, and maybe even to push this game towards a draw. Earlier, we were talking about Magnus trying to win. Now I think it should actually be a switch of focus, and Magnus needs to play safety-first chess. You can't keep on gambling your 2 pawns down if you keep taking risks. White's pieces will come to life, and yeah, you might regret it. So just take that pawn back. Why is he thinking right now? And yeah, Hikaru doing everything right. Such a good defender, never panics. Okay, Magnus going for the idea that we highlighted earlier. Firstly, dropping that black bishop back to a more promising diagonal, but also that g5 push that Tanya mentioned. Watch out, that might come later.
Well, if the king definitely moves forward to activate that kingside rook, I am expecting Magnus to blow open the kingside with that g-pawn advance. Whether that happens or not, we will see. But Magnus is still delaying picking up that extra pawn on a2. Is there a good way for Hikaru now to defend it, or he just lets it be and brings that rook into the game?
The top players in the world, they very rarely go passive for the sake of a pawn or two. Often they do have other things on their mind. First of all, he's preventing any counterplay. Tanya.
No more g5.
No more g5, Tanya.
Not fair.
Gutted.
But I think it was tempo for tempo, a gain for Magnus, because Hikaru didn't really want to put his pawn on h4, and what Magnus has accomplished is he can reroute his bishop back to f8, use an open diagonal. So a2 should probably be captured right now, but in terms of the last move for each side, that was an advantage for Magnus, even though ultimately Hikaru is doing just fine in the position, though the g3 pawn, that's on a dark square, only black has a dark square bishop, so if that bishop can reroute via c5 to f2, there could be some danger for white.
Yeah, long term, if you imagine everything coming off the board, if black starts picking off one pawn, especially the base pawn on g3, everything will fall. So still some hope for Magnus long term, whereas Hikaru, I think it's time, definitely in the near future, to start stepping forward to your king and activating your rook. He's done it, and Magnus surely now, better late than never, just take this pawn. Why not? It will eventually be defended if you don't take it now.
White has this extra pawn too as well. I mean, like practical chances, and especially as time gets lower and Hikaru does have a slight edge. Whoa, wait a second, check, step out the way.
Oof. This white king is doing a dance with death right now. It could get trapped on the back rank.
And that was important. He could probably be in a lot of danger if he would have stepped up to the e3 square, because potentially then black could have snapped up that knight on d3 and stepped back with his own bishop, giving a check. So lots of dangers and an attack with the bishop pair for Magnus.
This looks very dangerous all of a sudden. The white king is actually in a mating net, and so rook takes a2 is about to happen, and Hikaru does not look particularly thrilled. You see his face, he is diving into his laptop screen, because let's say you play rook b3, you want to get that bishop out of there. Black can ignore it. Black can take this pawn a2. You get the bishop. Guess what? I'm getting your rook. That rook that has not moved in the corner. It will never move because I'm snapping off the board.
Hey, Robert be doing his tactics every day, chat. Make sure y'all doing your tactics. Puzzle Rush, okay? Put your Puzzle Rush score in the chat. Make sure you do your tactics every day. That's a nasty tactic there. Rook b3 is a move a lot of people would actually make in this position. It attacks the bishop, but rook takes a2.
Yeah, rook takes a2, and that is such a big threat. It needs to be defended. It needs to be defended now. Only one move to stay in the game for white, or to avoid a losing position. That's to shuffle your king across and defend this pawn. Ooh, that looks scary as well. The king's not safe here either, James.
He finds it. What happens on doubling the rooks?
Yeah, doubling the rooks.
Step back with the knight and defend the a2 pawn? His knight c1 move? It looks awful.
It does look awful.
But it defends.
Exactly.
I mean, that is a huge find for Hikaru. That's not easy. Putting your king into harm's way just so you can retreat your knight. Retreating moves often the hardest to find in chess, but Hikaru has kept everything together. If indeed rook a8 is played, he'll step back with his knight. That's why Magnus has not made his move yet.
Yeah, ugly moves are better than bad moves after all, so sometimes you need to play those types of moves just to hold things together. And Hikaru shows no bias. That's why he's so good as well. He's happy to stay flexible. He'll play an ugly-looking move if it's necessary. And white's still 2 pawns up, so even if you have to play these weird-looking retreating moves, you have something to hold on for. You have a reason to be optimistic for the future.
What about bishop takes first, then double rooks?
Yeah, that looks very tempting as well, James. Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if he goes for that or if he's calculating that right now, Magnus Carlsen. 2 minutes, though, on the clock. Ooh. And he's still 2 pawns down, remember. Will he... Okay.
He's going for it, James. Your idea on the board.
Bishop d4.
And now he's going to go for that pawn, surely. 2 pawns down. Actually, which way is he going? He could go for those white kingside pawns that we mentioned. The black bishop could go and hunt those dark squared pawns. Options for black, but still 2 pawns down. The stakes are higher for him, I reckon, right now, at least over the next few moves. Magnus Carlsen needs to speed up.
Yeah, Hikaru has just played amazingly. This defense in a very difficult position. This is what makes Hikaru Nakamura the toughest to beat. His resilience and resourcefulness is second to none. What is going on here?
Great move by Hikaru there. You have to choose wisely. He was going to lose a pawn no matter what. And you see his rook on the 3rd rank now defending this pawn on g3. So he gives up his d pawn. It was a backwards pawn. He said that is a less important pawn because if g3 falls, so do the rest of the pawns. He's giving up the central pawn because the base on the other side of the board, on the king side, is still defended.
Yeah, still defended. If you keep this one intact, you will not lose this game. So, okay, what is Magnus...
Wait. Is there a nice little trick if you pick up that pawn with the a4 rook? Can rook f1 just trap that bishop on f2?
Whoa, Tanya.
Is there a square?
This bishop is trapped. Actually, if you take either way with your rook, if you take with the other rook as well...
But he's done it.
Trapped.
Oh, my God.
And Nakamura is getting really interested now. This bishop is trapped. Let's go back to them. What Magnus planning here?
So the eval bar didn't jump much. There has to be something. Rook F1. What happens after Rook F1?
There's a saving grace because black will bring the rook down to D2.
Okay, so takes. Oh, and then double. Wow.
Yeah, you're going to double on the second rank, and maybe white can't make progress. If Magnus saw this somehow, I'm not sure he did, but if Magnus saw this ahead of time, that is brilliant. That is, I mean, really prophecy.
Right.
And look at Hikaru. He's figuring all of this out because Rook F1 does trap Magnus's bishop, but on the other hand, the white bishop also ends up getting trapped. That is incredible calculation by both these players. And that means it's still game on. Opposite color bishop, but I think draw isn't the most likely result.
This one is crazy, and I think we will see this on the board. If not, we'll put it on the analysis board. Actually, while Hikaru thinks, let's put it up, because this is about to happen. It's what he's thinking about. It's what he's calculating, at least. The most natural move in the world. Trap your opponent's bishop. And here, actually, I think black only has one move to survive. He didn't go for this. Here, black, incredibly, needed to give his bishop up on this square.
What?
If you brought your rook back, you are losing. Rook takes after a capture on this square. Apparently, white is winning with a nasty check, the king moves, and a saving grace. Bishop to c4.
Whoa!
And white would have won. I think both players might have missed this.
I can forgive them.
Nasty.
Yeah. This would have been difficult. I don't think any human with 1 minute on their clock would have found this. For example, rook takes rook, and white emerges with an extra bishop. Missed opportunity for Hikaru, maybe.
Yeah, definitely. Rook F1 only move was bishop takes g3. Wow.
Instead, we have this position, and a set of rooks are about to be traded. Watch out for these pawns. Hikaru needs to be very careful. If this pawn disappears, black will be the one with winning chances.
And I look at Hikaru, I think he just figured it out, that he missed this. It's possible. He doesn't look happy with what's just happened. That is clear.
Yeah. He kind of called Magnus's bluff. Okay, the rooks are all disappearing. Magnus leans back and breathes a sigh of relief. Does he think it's a draw?
It is a draw. They agreed on it. So he doesn't have to think anything. They agreed on the draw in the position. And wow, that was actually wild.
That was some heat. That was some heat right there. Tactics way there at the end. And Hikaru got away a little bit in the beginning there. Magnus has some pressure on him. Wild game. We got another one coming up.
Yeah, look at Hikaru. I think he did see that moment at the end of it, throwing his hand in the air. What a big missed opportunity. He could have trapped Magnus's bishop. David, take it away.
Yeah, it was all about this one moment, only a few moves from the end of the game. The players we saw agreed to draw after all the rooks disappeared. Opposite colour bishops do have a very drawish tendency. But while the rooks remained on the board, that was anything but the case. Here, Nakamura, the move he was very focused on was this rook slide. The black bishop is trapped, but maybe here he assumed that Magnus had this drawing resource by attacking the white bishop and then pinning the white bishop. 2 rooks on the second rank, after all, extremely dangerous. But this killer move here by Nakamura, I think, was missed. A rook check, getting the rook out of the way, clearing the diagonal to hit this black rook. It's sadly on a light square, and actually, after the dust clears, white would have been winning. Magnus would have had maybe better defenses, but a missed opportunity nonetheless by Hikaru Nakamura.
Though the queens were traded off early on, what an incredible fight this was. Could have gone either way. And with that, it means Magnus Carlsen and Levon Aronian, they draw their first game going into the second one. If that's a draw, then we'll have an Armageddon. If either one wins this, they go through to the grand final. Before that action starts, for our non-subscribers, we've got a Twitch break coming up. But for those of you who have subscribed, stay right with us. Alexandra Botez is one of the biggest chess streamers in the world, and she was in Reykjavik Open here with the Chessable team, revealing some opening secrets.
Hi, I'm Alexandra Botez, and I'm in Reykjavik. I've been preparing for every single opponent here. I'm really lucky because I'm working with Grandmaster Hammer, and he's incredible at preparation. So I wanted to use this tournament as a way to force myself to actually study chess. So I think my openings are way better now than they were before. I have an incredible coach, and he actually told me that the preparation he gave me this tournament is better than the preparation he gave Magnus when he was helping him. The execution of my preparation was good in lines I'm more familiar with, and it was more difficult in openings that I completely switched to and had to figure out anew. My coach told me I have to stop playing the King's Indian. I know it's terrible, so I found an opening that was even worse. And I don't know if I'm going to continue playing it, but at least I know the theory better now.
Wow, better opening preparation than what was handed over to Magnus. David, any idea who that could be?
If Alexandra didn't reveal the name, I'm not sure I should, but it's a very well-known Norwegian player.
Ooh, yeah. All right, we'll keep you guessing with who is that. But we also want to wish Alexandra's sister, Andrea Botez, professional streamer and a professional chess boxer, a very happy birthday from all of us here in the studio. Well, right now we all can be very happy because we've got another game coming up in the match between Magnus Carlsen and Hikaru Nakamura. The score is a level. What were the big takeaways from that game one, Robert?
The biggest takeaway is that Hikaru Nakamura literally does not care usually, but I think he does after that game. He seemed to spot the tactic that he overlooked. It was really tough to find in the moment, but Magnus, he too probably looked with the engine after the game. He was like, oh, that was a close one.
A very close call there for Magnus Carlsen, who could have been in big trouble if Hikaru Nakamura would have found that tactic in the end, trapping Magnus's bishop. What a moment that was. But Magnus picking up those pawns. Hikaru sacrificing 2 pawns out of the opening. These players are playing very aggressive, and what's with the yawning?
Oh, yeah, he doesn't care, literally. I mean, literally doesn't care, right? Got the coffee there. Okay, you see him take a nap before he got on here today. But playing, he can't nap at the board, okay? Can't nap at the board here with that crazy game that just happened. Both of them understand that they are dangerous and lethal, and it can be anybody's game.
Yeah, we really saw their strategies for this match. We saw Hikaru just happy to take pawns, happy to play a really quiet, solid opening, and then just defend. But Magnus was the one trying to make things happen, trying to play on the front foot, and actually was nearly punished for it later. So will we see that same strategy in this game? Magnus has white. Will he be the one, again, initiating the play? Will Hikaru be the one reacting, defending?
2 extra pawns for Hikaru Nakamura were not enough. Magnus managed to keep the initiative in the first one. The countdown has started for our play zone, which means that the players will be in action in just a few moments. Magnus Carlsen starts with the white pieces. What are we expecting?
Catalan. Catalan.
Okay, I'll say English opening, Robert.
Okay.
I'll say E4.
1 E4. I'm going with Robert.
Okay. And Hikaru laughing. Is it because Magnus has played a strange, unexpected first move? Or is he just literally enjoying the moment?
A little bit of both.
Yes, there. We will have the first opening moves very soon from the players. Hikaru waiting as well. Wow. Well, he could also go for what he did with Levon, right? Start with the English opening and then just pick up pawns.
Well, if Hikaru offers him that, then he certainly will go for it. He had a good position. He won that game against Levon. Yeah. But I think Hikaru's looking for more solid openings as black.
Will we get an Armageddon chat? Tell us. I am excited about that. It would be a lot of fun to see the mind games between these two with the bidding Armageddon. But before that, Hikaru Nakamura with the black pieces taking on the world champion. And it's 1d4, the Queen's Pawn opening.
Ooh, so I'm wrong. Robert, Tanya, it looks like James might be the one to call it. But will it be the Catalan? Okay, no. It looks likely to be the Nimzo Indian. There we go. Black's bishop coming out, pinning the white knight. This is the Nimzo. And Magnus employing this very trendy variation, blocking the pin.
Did you see Hikaru look? And now he's paused. He looked into the camera with a little bit of smirk like, oh, Magnus, you sly dog. He was not expecting this specific opening today. And it doesn't look like much. All Magnus did was put his bishop in front of the queen, blocking the pin on the diagonal, but it changes the dynamic of the game.
Yeah, it really does. And I don't recall Magnus playing this one either. So a small surprise early to start this one. Magnus nabs the bishop pair. White has a very strong dark square bishop. That's why Hikaru jumps into the center of the board with his own knight. It's worth spending 1 or 2 moves here to remove those bishops, potentially. And here, Black is the first to castle. And now, how does he fight against the white center? How does he erode that white strength in the middle of the board?
Very often in these positions, Black ends up trading the knight for the bishop and then striking in the center, just liquidating that central pawn structure. Eventually, White could end up with an isolated queen's pawn. Are we expecting a trade and then a central break? Hikaru Nakamura says, no, I'm going for another plan, keeps the tension on the board.
Yeah, and one thing I will say is I've seen Hikaru have this exact position before with the black pieces, at least once or twice. So Magnus will be prepared. And look at the speed with which he's playing. He's immediately pushed forward in the center. First roll of balance, Magnus has the space. He has the more advanced pawns, so Hikaru needs to fight against that.
And he's looking at his opponent's plan, right? Hikaru played b6, so he could fianchetto his bishop. So what does Magnus do? He closes the diagonal before the bishop can even get there while gaining the space that David's talking about. So Hikaru does not develop his bishop yet. He first slides his rook over, anticipating a capture in the center.
Yeah, and Hikaru, that's opening recall face, number 304. Just staring up to the right and remembering his opening studies, his opening prep there.
Which Chessable course, James?
Oh, of course, you know I'm a know. I was out of theory when he played d5. I couldn't remember what the theory was. I'm looking up, too, like, what was the theory after d5? But everything was correct, even up to b6 and knight e4. Rook e8 is nice, keeping the tension. The Chessable course that this comes from is actually from Surya Ganguly in the Lifetime Repertoire semi-Tarash, but this is actually the Nimzo one. It's part 2, actually, one of the greatest courses on there on the Nimzo. You also got another Nimzo course that comes from WFM Mikey, M-A-I-K-E, I think that's what it is, but it's called the Fierce Nimzo. Also comes with a Fierce, another one that comes with it. It's 2 courses that come together on that, but that Surya one is definitely the one. It's a GM course, part 2. He recommends knight e4, b6, bishop b7 in these lines. So pretty good from Hikaru so far.
Oh, impressive encyclopedic knowledge again, James. Gotta say. And do you think Nakamura's been studying those courses?
You know what? No. In fact, not at all. Literally doesn't care, right? You know, so especially when he was playing what was he playing, that weird bishop d6 stuff in the Rosalimo? He wasn't looking at no courses because they was pretty ugly when he was getting some bad positions in that. But here, this is pretty good. I'd actually like the rook e8, keeping the tension here is what they say, keep the tension. Many times you will end up taking this bishop on c3 at the right moment. You're also going to play d6 too as well because when you get rid of the dark square bishop or when you get rid of one of your bishops, one of the rules is obviously put the pawns on the square of the bishop you traded. So making moves like d6 and maybe even e5 at some point, even playing f5. Sometimes you can really steamroll black and actually make this bishop look really bad. You don't even have to take it sometimes. The knight will actually go from e4 around to g5 and f7. Play it really aggressive and making the bishop very ugly on c3. So lots of ideas.
Yeah, really flexible structure for black, as you mentioned. It's all about whether you take this bishop at some point, and Magnus is trying to figure out whether he can keep this bishop, whether he can preserve it later on, or whether he can at least provoke this knight to make a decision. This knight really does clamp down on white's options. You don't really want to push this pawn forward to attack this knight because it weakens your king, and now we see maybe the reason behind Nakamura's move. He has opened up some lines for his rook towards the white king. So Magnus is a bit stuck. He needs to get rid of this knight somehow, but without it coming at the cost of his position.
Yeah, and the cost of the clock. He's almost been in a 2-minute think tank right now after this little move, rook e8, lining up the rook against Magnus's king. Is Magnus feeling a little uncomfortable right now?
Certainly. And Nakamura, meanwhile, having a nap.
He really is having a nap right now.
Literally a nap?
I literally don't care about my nap.
They say
I'm up. Oh, shoot, I was asleep. What the hell? Dang. All right, I'm good.
I mean, they say you snooze, you lose, but Hikaru is showing that he could take a nap and still hold off Magnus Carlsen. But in this position, Magnus is trying to determine what he does with his pawns. And that light square bishop on f1. It hasn't moved. It's blocked by its own knight. He can try to fianchetto that piece, but it comes at some risk because you keep moving pawns in your position. You leave some squares behind. And I think Magnus, maybe he's not familiar with the opening. I know it was his choice, but it might have just been a one-off decision without actually knowing the theory behind it.
Yeah, and that's the cost sometimes. If you haven't played openings, you can study them all you want. But if you haven't played them, you might not be familiar with the ideas. And what a move, James.
That's spicy. I mean, you know, that's up my alley all day. H4, and then Nakamura starts. He says something to himself like, what is this, bro? What are you doing? But it's very aggressive. And I like the idea. One bishop's pointing. He wants the other one to go as well. I mean, I was actually thinking this, too. I was like, okay, maybe not. Maybe he won't go for this. I was actually thinking castle queen side. You see this a lot in the knight f3, b3 lines early on with bishop to b2. This is like the Kali type aggression where even Shaq Mimidirov actually plays very aggressively with the knight f3, b3 lines. Knight f3, move 1, b3, move 2, bishop b2, move 3. He actually ends up playing c4 sometimes, playing queen c2 and casting queen side, throwing the g-pawn up the board. Bishop goes to d3, literally just trying to blow you off the board. So it has some reminiscence of that, where the knight can move, you can play bishop d3, queen c2, castle queen side, literally launching all out attack.
Yeah. That is an aggressive move by Magnus there. It's almost like when in doubt, play h4. And how serious is this? Is he planning to march down with that h-pawn all the way to h6 if he gets the chance? Or, David, is this more of a way to get the rook into the development with a rook left?
I'm not sure, Tanya. I hate it. I would never play like this. I just don't think you can break the opening rules like this. Look at the white king. Look at the white light square bishop. And Nakamura has the opportunity to open the center. When the center can blow open like this, can you really get away with playing on the flanks? You're not really attacking anytime soon. That black knight in the center on e4, so beautiful, so glorious as well. I prefer black, I've got to say.
Whatever advantage Magnus hopes to have, it's very long-term, but his king is in the center. So this game may not be very long if he doesn't figure it out. Because what we're seeing is this pawn in front of the black queen. It's backwards. It can't push forward, and that could make it a target. But that white king on e1, it's not castling queenside at any time soon because the knight on e4 hits that pawn on f2. The king needs to stay put, defending the pawn diagonally across from it. So this situation does not look that friendly to Magnus. I know he went h4. It may seem like he's the one launching the attack. I think he didn't know what to do, and he said, this looks interesting, let's try it.
Yeah, that's the feeling that we got. And David, black always has the option to actually pick up that monstrous bishop on c3. I don't see an attack, do you?
No, I think Magnus was perhaps inspired by Anish Giri, who earlier today in Division 2 defeated Denis Lazovic with an h4 pawn push in the Nimzo Indian. Yeah. But here it just isn't the same type of scenario. For anyone at home, I recommend checking that game out, that nice win by Anish Giri, and in the second game of his match against Den Laz. But here, Magnus, okay, he switched from that attacking idea, pushing his h-pawn forward, or that mysterious idea, I should say, and now he's gone to positional measures, just improving the white rook. Now he can't castle queenside, James. Disappointed?
Definitely disappointed, 100%. No, of course, I do understand rook d1, though. Rook d1, what it does is, you're stopping the bishop from moving. Bishop b7 is the logical move. Just put some pressure on the queen there. Of course, you can't really move the knight yet because it will be hanging, or at least the... There's actually, wow, bishop b7, knight d4, knight c2 is mate? Is that serious?
Whoa.
Oh, my goodness. Just show that real
James,
quick.
we have to show that.
That is mate. That's disgusting.
Yeah, so Nakamura played his queen to e7, very logical, standard move. Bishop to b7, this would have set a nasty trap. Queen takes pawn. Boom, knight d4.
That's disgusting.
You've been doing your puzzle rush, James.
Oh, every day. Every day, absolutely. Breakfast, lunch, and dinner.
And this queen now and the rook, they are disconnected. If queen takes queen, for example, intermediate move, knight c2, checkmate on the board.
Even queen b7, the same thing.
Yeah, queen b7 as well. Knight c2, checkmate. And maybe missed by both players, you've got to think. Not an easy one to spot from afar, but this one, Nakamura, is still in the air for later. He's first moved his queen.
Nasty variation, James. He's clearly been doing his workouts both on and off the board. But you mentioned Anish Giri. I just want to give a quick shout out to Anish. He did beat Yu Yang Yi, and he moves on to face Maxime Vachier-Lagrave in the losers final in Division 2. The winner of that matchup faces Nodirbek Abdusattorov, the Uzbek teenager, the former world rapid champion, the Olympiad champion. He is already in the grand final. So the winner of the Super Gym clash will face Nodirbek in the grand final tomorrow.
Yeah, big names everywhere. Big names, big games. And Magnus, h5, James.
Yeah, I knew this was coming. You have to play h5, right? And you want a rook lift, you know what I'm saying? Do you even rook lift? Are you hitting the gym with the rooks or not, right? h5, and then when we live, right? Rook h3 looks good. You want to play maybe f3 at some point, but that's really gross. So you have to be careful. There's even some sacrifices like bishop g7 at some point. I need to get my pieces out, though. This is the problem. I want to move this knight, but he's going to take on c3 almost every time. He stops me with h6. I mean, G4, you might as well. You might as well at this point. I mean, Magnus just out of his mind right now. I like it, though, but G4.
I have a feeling it might be the rook lift at some point over the next couple of moves, because actually, if this knight disappears, then you do have access to some really nice squares going towards the black king. But mysterious play by Magnus. Ambitious play. We've got to love it.
Definitely.
Yeah, creative stuff.
Wow. Magnus Carlsen with the aggressive H-pawn, but it has been stopped for the time being by Hikaru Nakamura. How dangerous is a potential sacrifice on F2? Is that something that Magnus needs to watch out for?
Potentially. Actually, it wasn't even on my radar until you mentioned it, Tanya. Now I'm super scared. But unfortunately, it doesn't work for black yet. It also, white's move. That's why I think advancing the white rook to the third rank, covering some squares, holding on some pawns, getting pieces into protective, defensive kind of formations before anything bad happens to the white king. Makes sense.
because I'm so scared of what Tanya just suggested, I might even bring my queen back 2 squares because the queen on d5, it's not attacking anything. It's actually vulnerable. It's susceptible to being attacked. And James showed some cool checkmate attacks for black because the queen would be loose. So queen back to d3, that also vacates the d5 score. I want to bring my knight up to f4 and into d5. At least I'll have one active piece, and that's an outpost square for white's pieces, and that protects e3. No knight sacrifice on f2. I think after the queen drops back to d3, finally white can start developing.
Yeah, I really like it. Just freeing up the knight, yeah. And defending this bishop as well, so that knight takes bishop will never come at the cost of kind of shattering those white pawns. Really sophisticated move there. Magnus, will he switch from kind of attacking ambitious play, though, to more kind of calm measures? That's the big question. Look at the clock as well. He's putting too much pressure on himself, Magnus Carlsen, to create something. Sometimes you need to take a time out, play sensible, kind of easy, natural moves instead.
Yeah, it's the first time today all day that we're seeing Magnus being the one who is behind on the clock there against Hikaru with about 7.5 minutes. Robert, your idea, and Magnus goes for it. He says that d5 juicy square, my knight belongs there.
That's why I love commentating, is because sometimes I can guess the move that Magnus is about to play, but I get help from my friends. You all were suggesting really good ideas, and because I was so concerned about this pawn in f2, and I didn't want to do a rook lift so early because I didn't know where my king would go, process of elimination led me to queen d3. I think it's a great decision, and it's difficult for players, once they're all in on the attack, to take a step backwards. Magnus saying, I need to play the position, not the mentality. He brings the queen back, the knight will be able to jump forward, as David was highlighting. The pawn structure will not be shattered if that black knight takes the dark square bishop on c3. I really like this move, and not just because I suggested it. I think it allows white's pieces finally to get out.
Yeah, really nice, harmonious move now, and Nakamura needs something himself. Long-term, black is struggling, especially the backward d-pawn, and James, your trick is on the board.
Come on, big dog, let's go. Yeah, tactics of breakfast, lunch, and dinner. We got him.
Wow, does it still work?
Oh, it's still there.
We got to show this,
it's
David.
It's still there, David.
Well, queen takes pawn. If you get greedy, you might live to regret it. Knight d4, James.
Oh.
Throwing it in the way. If this knight is captured by a pawn, the white queen drops, queen takes queen. If you take the enemy queen, checkmate, smothered mate, and that king is suffocating behind its own pieces.
But amazingly, it's an even, right? So
Wow.
that means that white has to continue this variation with rook takes that knight in the center.
I think it's rook d4.
This is a crazy line.
It is, bro. This is sickening to me that rook d4 even works. How is this even a thing?
So you give up material, and here, I guess, you take back with the bishop, and despite it being the endgame, it's level material.
Man, get out of here. This ain't equal. Like, get this off the screen. There's something wrong with the eval bar. Engineer, fix that bar. Something wrong with the bar. You know, I'm up in exchange, bro.
Magnus isn't taking on d7. I don't see this happening.
I mean, the alternative is knight f4, and he hasn't played it yet, so you know he's calculating. I told you. I told you.
You gotta be kidding me.
He was thinking. So he was taking his time. He actually loves endgames like this, where there's a material imbalance. He actually, I believe, knows with certainty that he's not worse in this endgame, and he's going to try to win.
Wow.
Yeah.
It went right down this line, bro.
Yeah.
So
You guys just call this. It's on the board.
I'm a Jedi. I'm a Jedi, okay? I'm a Jedi. Yep, that's right. But this is crazy. Bro. This don't make any sense at all.
Yeah, so we should
That's
do
cool, bro. What?
a recap. Material count now. Black has a rook, white has a bishop and 2 pawns in return. So level material, but of course extremely imbalanced. Black's rooks look pretty good, I've got to say. White has some weak pawns at the moment. Can white get organized? That's the question.
Materially, you said it's balanced, right? Because white has got the 2 pawns for the exchange. But who does it favor positionally? Is the exchange going to count more, or the minor piece activity here for Magnus?
You would think the rooks, but white's dark square bishop is a rock in the center of the board. It plugs an open file. If the black rooks can't break into white's position, then white's pieces might creep out a bit later on, especially that white knight, if it can find itself on a good square. I think Magnus has decent chances. We've got to trust the evaluation bar at its level, but I think I would choose black.
Oh, nice.
I'm starting to agree with David. Initially, I said, oh, white, it's Magnus Carlsen playing. He's sacrificing material. But that c4 pawn, it sticks out like a sore thumb. And I feel like Hikaru is going to be able to attack it either with his light square bishop or even with his knight. Sometimes you drop the knight backwards to put pressure on white's loose pawn. So I feel like here, Magnus has to find 2-3 accurate moves. Otherwise, he might be significantly worse.
Wow, a big critical moment for Magnus Carlsen. Will he be able to make the most of that centralized bishop on d4? The dark squared bishop can't be challenged. He does bring his knight into the game, eyeing that d5 square. He still needs a couple of moves to finish his development. Or will Hikaru strike first and make the most of that c4 weakness? The game really does depend on the next maybe 2 or 3 moves, and it could be very decisive.
Yeah, and now would be a good moment for Nakamura to pause and invest time on the clock. He's got a 4-minute advantage in the bank, and I think now is the time to spend it, because if you don't find something, White's light squared bishop comes out, White's rook might lift. James will be happy with that one, and I think there'll be no problems at all for Magnus Carlsen. If anything, the game could turn, but Black's rooks need to get active. Black needs to strike here and now.
I actually like knight d6 here. I mean, I'm a fan of the tempo, right? Knight d6 is tempo. I hit the pawn, make you do something. You either defend it or not. I mean, I'm going to take if you don't. And I'm also threatening something like knight to f5 as well. I want to attack this bishop. If b3, I maybe have b5, in fact. Actually, just to try to maybe, loosen some squares there. Maybe after takes, I might have rook c1. In some cases here, right, it's already some trouble here. But it's a very nice. I get some activity. So I'm a big fan of the tempo here and make things, you attack as much as you can, especially having his development lacking. King's in the center, bishop on f1. You haven't developed the rook on h1. The faster I can develop or do things, the faster you can get in trouble. I may even have b5 right now, right? So there's lots of possibilities for Black. But again, as you mentioned, David, that using his time, this is the time to use it right now.
Yeah, and just as I predicted, he is wisely spending his time. That's why he's so good, Nakamura. He'll blitz you, he'll kind of rush you on the clock when he needs to, but he also knows exactly when to pause. This is a critical moment because we've just seen that transformation of material. And the top players, when there's a transformation, whether it's simplifications, trades, captures, threats, attacks, that's when they pause and work out, kind of get their bearings on the position. I like your move there, James, retreating the Black Knight. And Magnus looking very calm at the moment, but I think inside he's actually slightly nervous about this exact position.
Big decision here for Hikaru. Will he strike immediately with the b-pawn or attack the c4 pawn? How fascinating is it that both these games have been very quick queen trades and still so rich in complications?
Yeah, because the players are not trying to necessarily make a quick draw. If they were doing that, they'd play the Berlin line that we see Hikaru and Wesley play all the time. But instead, we see games that just have an ambiguous start, and then the players are on neutral territory. And we just saw Hikaru drop his knight back, so he's clearly playing for win. And Magnus needs to be quick here. Right? We keep talking about it. He has given up a rook, but he has a bishop and 2 pawns in return. If Magnus was castled, could protect this pawn c4, he would be better here. I like the pair of bishops in the center. I just think that he's a little bit behind in development.
Yeah, and you could see on the frown on Magnus's face that he's not comfortable. Slightly too slow here to get everything he wants from the position. And on your note, Tanya, they've played each other over 100 times in rapid chess. I don't recall any boring games, any boring draws, really, unless it suits them both, maybe in a tournament situation. But that's always a fight, always imbalanced, both of them always going for each other. That's why it's such a popular matchup between these two titans.
Exactly. That's why we love to watch both of them play. We've never seen them settle for a quick draw, even without queens on the board. That's exactly what we saw in game 1. And here as well, they are going for each other's throat. Now, remember, if there is a decisive result, then the winner takes the match and will enter the grand final. If it's a draw, then we will have an Armageddon, a big threat on the board currently. The c4 pawn is under fire. Magnus Carlsen thinking, how can he defend it? Does he need to defend it? Can he start looking for activity already? Is b3 going to appear on the board? Are you expecting that, David?
Yeah, to be honest, I wasn't really considering anything else. But as you mentioned, Tanya, maybe you can go for activity yourself as White. Maybe it's time for that rook lift for Magnus to show he's been doing the hard yards and to move this rook up the board. For example, you could shuffle it up, and if the knight takes the pawn, suddenly you slide and counterplay against the Black King. Look at how strong this bishop is. I love this piece, maybe the MVP right now for White, attacking this pawn with the rook and the bishop, of course. Black can defend, I should mention, by dropping back with his knight. That's why I think Magnus is pausing. Otherwise, he would definitely go for this active continuation. And suddenly the Black rook would have an open file. It's not just the pawn dropping, it's more the open file. But still, interesting option for White.
He's taken about 2.5 minutes. He's down to 3 minutes on the clock, and critical positions are coming up. He will have to take some more critical decisions in this game. Those extra seconds are going to count. Magnus Carlsen drops below 3 minutes.
That was very, very important here. I mean, you don't care who you are. I mean, even Magnus has a problem. Like, of course, Magnus lost to Hikaru in the Speed Chess Championship, right? This is the Speed Chess Championship, but, I mean, it's getting in speed time territory, in fact, for Magnus at least, right? You can't do another 3 or 4 minute think, actually, as Magnus here. At least, I mean, if I'm Hikaru, I actually have 2, maybe 3 more 2 to 3 minute thinks that I can do right now. So, I mean, this is huge time edge for Hikaru here. And, you know, this is a critical moment. I'm also down in exchange. I need to be precise. I need more time to think about this. I think practically Magnus is in a lot of trouble right now.
Yeah, and is Hikaru sensing that? Is he sensing a little blood here?
He certainly is. He knows he has the better chance here. And you see Magnus, he just gave up his c4 pawn. I think he wants to just continue to connect his pieces, and now he's going for opposite colored bishop. I think this was a great practical decision by Magnus Carlsen. The bishop on d4 cannot be touched by that bishop on b7. They're on their own color complexes, and a light square bishop in this position, what's it going to attack? I think this is fantastic understanding by Magnus. He's trying to minimize the damage, and I do think he's accomplished that.
Yeah, fully agreed. And he's putting pride to one side as well. Here, it's most likely white just playing for a draw, but that is far safer than the alternatives where it was chaotic, where he had 2 minutes on the clock. And now Magnus is king, super safe, actually, on this square, on g3. Everything defends each other. If you notice, the white rook can take care of itself. All the pawns, though, are defended by pieces, and all the pieces defended by pawns. They're kind of helping each other out. So Magnus looking very solid, despite the fact he's down on material now. It's still that white bishop playing the most important role, keeping the black rooks at bay. And Naka switches focus with his rook.
He about to take that boy. Yeah, he about to take that bishop. That bishop's so strong. I mean, that's the strongest bishop ever. You're actually right. I mean, in fact, like, you can't never move it. That is such a strong bishop. So you may have to sack it back, to be honest here. That's a really rock-solid bishop. I like how you said rock there, like on d4. I mean, you can never move it. And, like, what do I do now? Yeah, I have the exchange, but this is tough. I mean, wow, Magnus is definitely showing some class here. I mean, yes, okay, you got your exchange, but look at this bishop. I mean, my knight, I don't have any weaknesses anymore, maybe a4. I mean, even if you win that, it's still not as clear.
Yeah, this is the human touch over analysis engines, computers, because I think computers probably didn't have this on their first 2 or 3 options, but I just love it for white. It's so easy to play now. You just bring your rook across to a1, you throw this white a pawn up the board, you trade off pawns. Nothing to worry about, really, for white. And the evaluation bar still in the middle, showing that, yeah, Magnus solid. I think that's the best case scenario from the position he had earlier.
And I think Hikaru recognizes it. The way he's been looking at this position is like, oh, I should have something, and you see it on his face right now. As soon as I said it, we were just copying each other. Imitation is the most sincere form of flattery. So thank you, Hikaru, for that. But I think that Hikaru's look is like, I should be better, right? I have a rook for just a knight and 1 pawn, but a4 was a wonderful choice. That rook on h1, Magnus's lone rook, it's not doing anything. It's not participating in the game, but he may swing it to the other side of the board, push that pawn to a5, and say, my rook is going to get active whether you like it or not. I'm going to trade off some material. So if you want to sacrifice and exchange back by rook takes d4, have fun with that. There's not enough material remaining. I'm not going to lose this game.
He also got a pass pawn now. Look at the eval bar, like, got you. Don't sack it. That's what you get, right?
Yeah, and the white rook gets active nonetheless. Suddenly it's white, maybe with the advantage. The white knight, very stable. The black bishop, not stable at all. And Nakamura brings his rook across. Maybe just having lost a turn there, a full tempo, he could have played this move on the last go. And if he does offer this rook trade, of course, Magnus will say no. The white bishop, white knight only hold their own if there's a white rook on the board, and Magnus will avoid that trade for sure. As Robert mentions, trying to get his own rook active next move. That's just a general tip. If you're playing with minor pieces, they're always much stronger if you have a rook in combination with them. And looking good for white, I've got to say, or at least looking stable enough. Still not better, but no
That's
risk.
actually a great point that you just made, David, that in these kind of positions, Magnus has to avoid the rook trade to keep the bishop and the knight, the minor pieces, hold their own against the exchange that Magnus is currently down. He wants to get that a-pawn rolling. He wants to try and create weaknesses in black's camp. Is that a threat that Hikaru can stop right now, or is Hikaru going to create his own counterplay?
Well, I think that if the queenside pawns get traded off the board, the game's immediately a draw. So that is what Magnus aimed for. If the rooks come off now, the reason why white will lose is because of the presence of the queenside pawns. The bishop and the knight, they're far to the side. They won't be able to defend those pawns on the queenside. So if B and A pawns are off, then you could trade rooks. You still make a draw because there's nothing black can do to kick your minor pieces away.
Yeah, and I heard this great saying, I think it was by Jesse Cray, and he was saying it's like ice cream flavors. You want one of everything when you're the exchange down. Here, you want a rook, you want a bishop, you want a knight, because they actually combine really well together.
To make a sundae.
To make a sundae, exactly.
There you
to
go.
make a tasty sundae. But yeah, without one of those flavors, it becomes a much more bland position, much more one-dimensional, and it's not to everyone's taste. So
yeah, I think here, actually, believe it or not, the only plan that I see for black here, David, is maybe like, this is a long shot because, I mean, his pieces are so well placed, Magnus's, that the plan, I mean, even if time is getting even more even now, too, is rook c1, right? He's going to avoid the trade, bring the other rook. Well, he didn't play it, but my goal here is to play king h7 and go g5. Then after en passant, play g5 again, get rid of the knight, and get my rook to c2 and the other one to g1.
Wow.
This is I mean, it's a long-term plan, but if I can get this, then I can win the g2 pawn. But it takes a while to do this.
Yeah, instead, I like this, James, at least from a point of view of going for the win. Hikaru chooses a more solid option. We see this position in front of us. There's been a trade of one set of pawns on that side, on the queen side, and white should be relatively safe. Feels like Nakamura, he's just set up a barrier. Black's rook on the 7th rank, black's bishop. Make sure that the white rook will never get active. And wow, indeed, he is retreating. I think he's just saying, OK, I'm going to play for the draw.
He offered a draw.
Wow.
Yeah, he did offer a draw, and I don't know if Magnus hasn't seen it, but he should probably accept.
Yeah.
I think Magnus knows. He's kind of considering it. He gave that look, but then Hikaru's shaking his head. Wow. Hikaru up and exchanges offered a draw.
What would we do here in the studio? Would we say yes if we were Magnus or no?
Oh, yeah, I'm down to exchange.
I'd say yes.
I ain't about to push this boy. I can't move nothing.
He said yes.
Oh, we're getting
congratulations. He said yes.
You made him an offer he couldn't refuse.
Wow. Guys, that means we are going to be heading into an Armageddon. Hikaru.
You go, huh?
He still can't believe Magnus accepted the draw. I'm not sure what's going on there, but I'm loving what I'm watching on the camera.
He's analyzing, for sure. He's looking where he could have done better.
I mean, he has a wooden shield. I mean, he has a wooden shield and a pawn, and I mean, you know, he has a wooden shield.
Yeah.
Classic right triangle.
Wow, quite a complicated endgame that was by these two players with Hikaru Nakamura up in exchange, but Magnus Carlsen with the compensation. David, break it down for us.
Yeah, and I guess some of the viewers at home might be wondering why the game ended prematurely there, why the players agreed to a draw, and this was the final position. Black's rook has just retreated to the 8th rank, to the c8 square, and essentially Nakamura is saying, I'm defending everything. And indeed, this black bishop holds the queenside pawn, nothing to worry about on that flank, and these two black rooks hold any infiltration squares for white's pieces. Meanwhile, on the inverse side, on the flip side, for black here, you can't break through either. This white knight guards some very important pawns. The only pawns on light squares, the only two potential weaknesses, nothing to be done there for black. And this rock-solid bishop, the best bishop you'll ever see, defended by a pawn on a beautiful outpost, and it appears at both sides of the board. Essentially, neither side can make progress without worsening their own chances, without taking massive risks. So the status quo is maintained, and the draw was agreed.
Wow. Hikaru offers a draw. Magnus accepts it. And with that, we are heading into an Armageddon after two very exciting draws. After this Twitch break, we will be back with a breakdown on the strengths and weaknesses of these two players.
The message I really want to send to people is that, you know, men, the adults have to do better, you know, to create a better culture. Because there were so many accounts that I've heard that were mentioned in the article where people very young at the time would say like, well, everybody else around me acted like it was normal. So I didn't say anything. I didn't do anything. It just was very normalized. And yeah, that just needs to stop. And we need to step up and make sure that our game is like safe and fun for everyone.
Just played an exciting game and want to see if you got a brilliancy? Or maybe where you could have improved? Chess.com's game review is just a click away. Game review is a fast, fun, and instructive guided review of your games. See your accuracy and your opponent's accuracy. Check out the eval graph for an instant overview and scroll down to see how many great moves, best moves, blunders, and yes, brilliancies you have played. Learn from Chess.com's coach who gives move explanations, opening statistics, and shows you the best lines of play. With retry mistakes, you can get another shot at finding missed opportunities. Try Game Review today on web, iOS, or Android.
Magnus Carlsen, the world #1, multiple-time world champion and winner of the previous 2 editions of the Champions Chess Tour. Magnus has played every opening under the sun. He even has a variation of the Sicilian named after him. So after e4, c5, Magnus started playing knight c3 a few years ago with the idea that he could open the center immediately by playing d4, actually going against conventional chess wisdom of developing the white queen very early. But the whole idea here is that after the queen gets kicked away, she's happy to step back. And for example, if black continues to develop normally, white just creates a fianchetto, gets the bishop to a nice diagonal, and later castles on the queen side. Actually a very aggressive opening, not technically part of Magnus's style. Magnus's real recipe for success is that he adopts his strategy according to the opponent. He's able to do anything with a very universal style, and if you get him in the endgame, there's no chance. He's perhaps the best endgame player of all time, and you can go and check out some of his ideas, some of his thoughts on the endgame in his Chessable courses.
2 of the very best players in the world facing each other, and it has gone down to the wire as we will be seeing the Armageddon. We love to watch the fights and battles between these 2 players, Magnus Carlsen and Hikaru Nakamura. Robert, what makes Magnus so strong in these formats?
It's a great question. Magnus Carlsen, he plays everything under the sun. He's afraid of nothing and no one, including when he played in the Olympiad against Mickey Adams, David's compatriot and good friend. In that game, he played what's known as the Norwegian rat defense, where white plays e4, and after the move d6, he plays d4, and he plays this g6, knight c3, knight f6, and he brings his knight over to h5. It is, I think I messed up the mover. Honestly, it's such a weird, rare line. David, you got me covered, but Magnus will play anything under the sun.
Wow. Robert, with all these offbeat openings that Magnus keeps playing, how difficult is it for his opponents to prepare against him?
It's nearly impossible, but the same is true for Hikaru, right, James?
Absolutely. Of course, Hikaru being an absolute beast, strong, tactical, wizardry, right? Of course, one of my favorites. Of course, I followed a lot of his games, especially when King's Indian. If we bring up this one right here, this is actually against Gelfand, right? Playing with the black pieces, where he left his queen hanging for like 4 moves, right? If you see it here, of course, bishop h3 in this position, right? I mean, David got me here as after his queen was attacked, he played bishop to h3, which was the next move.
This position? I'm catching up with James. Bishop h3.
Right, bishop h3, queen hanging, right, okay. Right, then we have the next move. What happened here?
Bishop f1.
Bishop f1, right, okay. Then after bishop f1, what did he play, David?
Queen d3.
Queen d3!
Wow.
Look this game up. Look this game up. This is against Gelfand. This is the type of chess that I like, and this is why I'm a big fan of Hikaru as well, because he plays this kind of chess. This is from a King's Indian, for all you King's Indian fans out there. What happened after this, David?
White ended up playing on and resigning a few moves later, but I guess the main idea, James, bishop takes queen.
Yep.
And boom, checkmate.
Absolutely. Beautiful. It's disgusting here, right? Of course, the rook on g7 defends the bishop on g2 here. And actually, in a few more moves, he was able to take the knight on c3, and he ended up winning this game very cleanly. But the queen was hanging for like 3 or 4 moves. Very aggressive, tactical player. Sees things that a lot of us just, wish we could see. And you can see these things, obviously, if you do a lot of calculation over everything and also follow Hikaru's games as well.
Wow, thank you so much, Robert and James. Magnus Carlsen with his varied opening repertoire, making him one of the most difficult players to prepare against, as Robert mentioned. And of course, the super aggro style of Hikaru Nakamura, as James just showcased, makes him such a beast. Of course, both these players are extremely universal, can handle any type of positions. Well, right now, they have to handle the Armageddon. Some mind games we're expecting in the bid. The player who bids the lower time wins the Armageddon bid, gets to choose the color. Usually it's black, because black gets result odds, which means that if it's a draw, black wins the match. White has to win the Armageddon on demand. The opponent starts with 15 minutes, no increment. Wow, that's always a lot of fun. Now, guys, in the Air Things Masters, we saw so much drama with the Armageddon bids. What are we expecting? How low is too low?
I don't want to go first. David, you save me.
I think anything under 8 minutes is too low. We've seen it in the past. Levon Aronian made it work against Artemiev, but it came down to 1 or 2 seconds. Magnus bid under 8 minutes once, and he was punished on the first day of this tournament. So I think we'll see maybe 8-9 minutes minimum. It should be more than that. I don't think they can take risks.
Yeah, if Magnus bids 8 and wins, that means Hikaru starts with 15. That just feels like too much of a time advantage for Hikaru.
Yeah, it's a tricky situation because, I mean, Hikaru gets a lot of time, but he also gets the white pieces, but then it's a draw, and draw wins, and also a win wins with black. Like, how much time do you have? I mean, really, it's like a mess right now. And of course, but Magnus always usually outbids everybody. I don't know how he does it, so I can't wait to see the bid here to see if he even wins this bid at all.
Well, you called it, James, and we are going to reveal the big bids for this big Armageddon that is coming up. And Magnus Carlsen bids 9 minutes 27 seconds, loses the bid to Hikaru Nakamura, who bid 9 minutes 17 seconds. It is advantage Hikaru. He takes the black pieces, but starts with 9 minutes 17 seconds. Robert, what do you make of this winning bid?
It is advantage Hikaru. It has been advantage Hikaru over the chessboard. So I'm not surprised that he won the psychological battle as well. But I don't think Magnus will be too unhappy, because he gets a huge head start on the clock.
Yeah, how much of a mental win is this for Hikaru?
It will be huge. We saw 2 months ago in the Air Things Masters, Magnus outbid Hikaru by 1 second, and Magnus went on to take that Armageddon. So now, okay, it's a 10-second difference, but clearly Hikaru getting exactly what he wanted.
Yeah. But we're sure Hikaru will start with the black pieces, and he does. Hikaru with the black pieces, and he will have 9 minutes. How much did he bet? 10 seconds? No, 17. 9 minutes and 17 seconds. Magnus Carlsen starts with 15 minutes, the English opening. We've seen Magnus do this before today.
Yeah, we've seen it before, and it worked extremely well against Levon Aronian. And will lightning strike twice? That's the question. 9 minutes against Magnus Carlsen. Most of us wouldn't be able to handle it, but here we go. Nakamura clearly has done his preparation. He would have been watching that match earlier today that Magnus had. And, okay, Magnus just feeing Kettering. Black is the first to castle. Black can actually wreck the white pawn structure right now. I'm surprised by this choice. Robert, James, what do you think of this opening?
You know, I like it for Magnus, and Hikaru is starting to think here, because any sort of imbalance is good for the side that needs to win the game. If you take on c3 with that bishop, the pawn structure is ruined, double isolated pawns. We keep talking about how we don't like those, but we love ourselves a good bishop pair. So here's the big moment. Will Hikaru take on c3, James?
Yeah, I don't think he will. And the reason being, the bishop pair is very nice. I also do not want to give him that imbalance with me having this big time difference, too, as well. Unless, you know, if I know the theory, which it looks like he doesn't here, he's now thinking now. So, of course, they may be a little bit out of theory here. I need to make something happen, but I do need to figure out what I want to do with this bishop. Because it's kind of a clumsy bishop, too, as well. It could be hit by many things. I'm also moving it a second or third time. I may need to make a move like play h6. But maybe he's going to tuck the bishop on f8 if it's attacked. Because we need to move it somewhere. He couldn't wreck the structure, but he doesn't know exactly what he's doing afterwards, right? Are we going to get rid of the bishops here? Ooh-wee, what is this? Knight d5. This is getting spicy already.
Yeah, wow. Magnus saying, okay, we can trade all the knights off the board, but the structure change might favor white. Wow. Okay, when you need to win, this is counterintuitive somewhat, allowing all these trades, but he's asking big questions. Nakamura has spent a bit of time so far. Big difference on the clock.
And that's what surprises me. He has already spent about a minute and a half. He goes into a think tank. And this trade, yes, it favors. Now, to remember, if this game ends in a draw, Hikaru actually wins the match, you would think it's simple, go for the knight trades, but it changes the structure, an asymmetrical pawn structure, and you've got to evaluate where that really leads. Or will Magnus recapture with the bishop?
If he trades all the knights, it just leads to an advantage for white, and this is looking like it's happening here. I don't like this for Hikaru. It's Magnus's style of position. We have a semi-open C-file for the white rooks to go after the black pawns. Black has not finished development either. I do not like this one bit for Hikaru, and he's way down on the clock. He's spending so much time already.
Yeah, I've seen Magnus actually have this exact pawn structure several times, including, you mentioned him earlier, Michael Adams. In the London Chess Classic a few years ago, Magnus had this exact structure, also with the bishops, also with that very far advanced central pawn, and he just destroyed Adams there. Just completely outplayed him. Extra space for white. White's rooks have access to the open C-file, which is going to be essential later on. Magnus first, though, he's got to guard against some attacks against his central pawn. I'm expecting that dark-squared bishop to just come out, and I think advantage white on both board and clock.
Yeah, that's tough. That's tough there. I mean, definitely, I'm one move away from completing development, really, in a way, which he does. Bishop e3. My rooks are now connected, and I can bring the A rook to the C file here. Just try to play this position as deep as I can. C6 might be a thing here after rook to C1, if he even plays that. There's a bishop D4 here. Yeah, this is definitely Magnus's grind type position. It's just boring, like that. I mean, but I have space, which is very important. Space is definitely some type of advantage. I can do things with space. I really wanted to have the bishop on the long diagonal. But, you know, it's not really feasible, especially if I can play f6 or even bishop e5 to trade more pieces off. So you want to keep a few pieces on. He plays rook d1, maybe a potential d6 later on if possible. b6 for bishop b7. Okay.
Yeah, I guess that black light square bishop needed to breathe. Right. It needed to get out somehow, and he's found a way to do that. There is a threat on the board. Black's dark square bishop wants to slide to c5, hitting the white queen, hitting the white bishop on e3 as well. So Magnus needs to move his queen, and he needs to move it now.
Yeah, and Magnus just deciding which is a good square to move to the queen to. Meanwhile, Hikaru developing his own light squared bishop. It could step up to b7. It could step up to a6. But it is going to be about the time scramble. It is going to be about trying to bring Magnus down to level the clock for Hikaru. But currently, Magnus keeps a huge time advantage on the clock. But he's gone into a bit of a think right now. What squares come to your mind? Queen g4, queen d2? Queen d2.
Yeah, he just retreats the queen. I think it's a good decision, but to me, this is a tale of two halves. Not first half, second half like we think in sports, but here it's about the halves of the board. We look at the left side of the board, the queen side. Black has 4 pawns to white's 3, but unfortunately for black, those pawns are not so mobile, and that is going to be a problem for Hikaru to deal with, because if that bishop safely moves away from e3 for white, watch out. That pawn will go up to e4 afterwards, maybe f4 to follow, and then the pawns are rolling. So I think that white's pawns are just better placed, and Hikaru will have his work cut out for him.
Yeah, he does. And, OK, he's playing on the side he's strongest. Makes a lot of sense. He pushes this pawn forward. He's saying, OK, these two will never advance at least. Maybe this bishop will try to make Robert's plan slightly less feasible by putting some pressure on this backward e-pawn. But Magnus is saying, OK, look at my rooks. They're so much more efficient than yours right now. This is the big target in the position. And watch out for Magnus as well. At the right moment, trying to trade off these bishops just to highlight the weakness of this backward pawn. Still early days, of course, but lots of maneuvers here. And maneuvering positions actually cost players more time on the clock. So in terms of the Armageddon, great strategy for Magnus. This one is not going to fizzle out anytime soon. We won't see queen trades anytime soon either. So how is Hikaru going to manage with 6 minutes, no increment?
And is that Magnus's strategy? Just keep the pieces on the board, just keep making moves. Even if they don't have direct threats, he just wants to bring Hikaru down on the clock, flag him?
You remember the advice we gave Artemiev? Be shameless? Magnus has no problem with that. He will flag Hikaru if the opportunity presents itself. And right now, he has nearly double the time. We think his position is better here. So I think James will agree with me over here. Magnus, he knows how to play a bullet game or two.
Absolutely, 100% knows how to play bullet. And with the best of them, I mean, even playing Hikaru all the time in these matches, too, as well. I mean, people always like, hey, these guys should play. Hikaru and Magnus should play. Many games in bullet. People want this to happen, and bishop f4 on the board.
More trades offered, and that's exactly what we're talking about, that Magnus needs to keep more pieces on the board. Is this a surprising move?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, and there's a trap involved in this move. If black gets greedy here, Hikaru's calculating it. He will have to burn some time here, but if you get greedy and grab a pawn, this backfires instantly. Your queen is hit immediately and skewered.
Yikes.
Queen takes queen. There's an intermediate check. Zwischenzug, Zwischenschuck, as they say in German, in between check, and when the king moves, the queen drops. White has won a rook. So Hikaru spots that, of course. He moves his bishop, and now Magnus will be thinking, firstly, he can step his pawn forward, free of charge. You can start advancing on the side you're stronger. We talked about those two halves of the board. Secondly, there might be sacrifices on this square at the right moment. And yeah, I would be worried for Hikaru if white can get away with that safely. First of all, the pawns start advancing. The avalanche begins. And, OK, after a trade, look how backward this pawn is on c7. Eternal weakness for black.
That's ugly.
Wow, this looks like bad news. And Magnus there hinting or doubling up on the C line, targeting the weakness that, David, you just pointed out. Is this position more dangerous than it looks for Hikaru, Robert?
Hikaru wouldn't want this position a classical game against Magnus Carlsen. You give them both an hour, I still think that white wins this position a large percentage of the time, because the position for black, you're just shuffling back and forth. White can make progress. And speaking of progress, throw the H pawn up the board. There could be an attack because black is saddled with this weakness on c7. Every move that's being played is actually growing the advantage for Magnus.
Yeah, it's like the board is cut in half. You mentioned those two halves. White is totally in control on both flanks now. And black, his army will be stretched. Later on, they will be overwhelmed, most likely, because black's pieces will be tied down to that weak c7 pawn, the backward pawn we highlighted, and Magnus will switch his attention to the other flank too.
I knew it was coming.
Does it immediately.
Yep. G4. I was like, can I play G4 here? Anytime I can put a pawn on G4, we're going for it, right? So G4, rook G3, G5 is coming. You have the rook live. It can shift to both sides of the board. I mean, white is definitely in control in this game.
Yeah, beautiful decision. It's the tale of two fronts. If you attack on both sides, the opponent cannot, will not have a reply. And also 6 extra minutes. That has grown since the start of this game, the time advantage. Nakamura wincing, not enjoying his last move, but he needed to put pawns on dark squares. He has no dark square bishop. He needs some control. Ugly chess.
That's the girl's move.
Well, when you put the pawns on dark squares, your light squares become weaker. If that bishop on g2, if you could pick it up and put it on the square f5, I think black would be toast. But unfortunately, that bishop is behind its own wall of pawns for the moment. At some point soon, we may see that bishop head to h3, push that pawn to g5, and I know James likes to say we live because that bishop may kill black's chances with the checkmate.
Absolutely. You're going to have to play something like bishop b7, but you can't even play that because it breaks the connection of the pawn on c7. He plays g5 anyway. Break it up. Open up shop, big fella.
Wow.
Open up.
He's really going for it, not holding back at all. h4, g4, g5, what momentum. And it looks like the rooks are ready to get into the attack as well. Every single piece perfectly placed for this.
Yeah, looking great for white. However, Hikaru hits Magnus with a threat. The white queen there needed to step back. That was an important tempo gainer. And now black has gone up a pawn temporarily, but watch out for this white bishop. It's coming, James.
What the? You can play that?
You can take on c7 now?
You can get away with that?
Wow, white's rook can just grab that backward pawn that we've been talking about. This looks fantastic.
Does it? He does it, David.
Yeah, and after this rook trade, we're going to be left with a position, still level material, but black's king's so open. White's rook is coming into the 7th rank. This looks like a massacre. It should end in a checkmating attack.
You know what move I like here? Because white could give a check, but the black king will escape back. I would play the move queen h7. Take away the escape score. That just feels like a speed chess move. Because now Hikaru has to figure out after the queen goes up to h7 with rook c7 check coming next. Where is your king going to? It's going to be a quick checkmate. So I think this is a very nasty move to face when you have a few minutes in your clock.
Really instructive. You find that move by looking at your opponent's replies, your opponent's plans and their hopes after rook check. As Robert says, actually the king is pretty safe temporarily on g8. So cut that one out. And Magnus is paused. He's not playing the most natural move in the position, this rook check. Therefore, he might find the even stronger queen h7, taking control of the escape square. That might be a killer. Nakamura with 4 minutes on his clock. He will struggle to find a defense to that move, queen h7.
That's a strong move.
Wow.
Hikaru is thinking about queen h7 as well. He definitely has it on his radar. He's trying to think what happens if Magnus finds this move. It is a big moment in this Armageddon game. If Magnus goes queen h7, big trouble for Hikaru on the clock, 4.5 minutes. Is he going to do it? Or will he give a check with the queen or the rook? I think he does it. He goes for it. Robert, you called it. He finds it, and Hikaru immediately hates the fact that Magnus found this move.
Yeah, because now what does black do? Because you want to block a check on the 7th rank, but you can't give it the 8th rank either. And most endgames will be winning for white. Let's talk about pawn structure for a second. Black's pawn structure is broken. So most endgames will result in a pretty easy advantage and maybe a win for white. So I'm not liking the look of this for Hikaru, especially now as he's about to dip under 4 minutes.
Yeah, you need an hour on your clock to defend this one. But look, Hikaru doesn't have that luxury. Okay, he brings his rook across. Really nice defense. He's actually trying to slide his king back the other way. And the black rook and the black queen are actually lined up, so watch out for a counterattack against the white king later. Queen of rook positions when it's just major heavy pieces on the board. It's all about the king safety. Black's king, not safe, but the white king might have some questions too.
This boy got some of the best defense I've ever seen. Rook F8 is nasty because after check, king E8, now I'm hitting F2. And a draw is all I need, big fella. So if you make a mistake and I take on F2, I at least have a draw there. You might even be losing in some cases. So, wow. I mean, what a defensive move there. After rook check, king to E8, and now H2 is hanging. I was also thinking if I could play E5 here. Pawn E5 is that it dislodges the queen, right? Let's show that on the board. Pawn E5 is nice. I mean, if queen takes, then you might be in some trouble here. Yeah, engine automatically goes up. And maybe like a queen something. H5? Queen C2, maybe?
Queen C2 is nasty, James.
Yeah, because you have to defend, and you got Queen C6 and rook check. Yeah, absolutely. Right.
James, you're on fire.
I am a Jedi. Sometimes I forget that. Sometimes I forget. But it is, that's nice. But let's go back to pawn takes. After E5, what happens on pawn takes?
Ooh,
yeah, and this is the problem I had.
Same idea, maybe. Just rook C7 check and
maybe
queen
rook
C2.
C6 first. Oh, yeah, you're right. You're right.
Same idea,
yeah.
but the point, the queen comes back to C2. So, James, you're mixing offense and defense, and that's nasty.
I appreciate that, Jedi. I appreciate that. Yeah, Big Robert. I'm trying to get like you. Okay, so, yeah, that's nice. Let's see what happens.
One thing I want to point out, yesterday Hikaru blundered mate in 1 on the F8 square. Now he's learnt from that. Yesterday it was rook F8. Now he finds a defense, rook F8. I was just looking. That was the only move pretty much to stay in this game for Hikaru Nakamura. So he's learned from yesterday. But will Magnus find a breakthrough now? The more I look at it, James, the more I like that move. I think Magnus needs to go for something like that before it's too late. Otherwise, the advantage might fizzle out and disappear.
He's calculating right now, but Hikaru Nakamura in just 30 seconds finds the best move in the position for black, bringing that rook, not just defending his king, but also putting pressure on Magnus's king on G1. It's not an easy idea to find what James has mentioned, to retreat the queen all the way back to that C2 square once the e-pawn advances. Will Magnus be able to find this? He's gone into a think tank. He is looking for the blow in this position. Do you think he's going to go for this? Will he sacrifice the e-pawn?
I don't know. I didn't see it coming until James mentioned it. So while I'm trying to wrap my head around this, I want to give a quick shout out to Maxime Vachier-Lagrave. He takes down Anish Giri, makes it to the grand final in Division 2. So MVL, the Frenchman with 3 names, he's doing quite well. And shout out to over 60,000 of you watching this broadcast. We appreciate you too.
Wee, 60K.
Hey everyone.
What's up, y'all? What's good? We here. What up? What up?
Wow. I think the world just loves to see Magnus and Hikaru battle it out, and this is why we love it. Both players bringing on the best attack and the best defense. I see the eval bar. It says that black is still fine. Well, you don't have e5 just yet because the f2 pawn is hanging.
Counterattack. Black has a threat. That's why the move order was so important. James's kind of fleeting opportunity pushing that white pawn forward. It's not available anymore. Let's just show that queen takes pawn is a killer blow if black gets time for it. Queen takes pawn. That's why rook f8 was such a nice defense for Hikaru. Now, how does Magnus deal with this? You have to take a time out. You don't really want to have to retreat the white queen to a passive square. What would she be doing here? I don't think she's doing much. And what else? You simply have to do something. Do you bring your rook back? But that feels wrong. He's checked and traded off the rooks. And we're in a queen endgame. This is the current position.
The worst is over.
No pass pawns for white.
Worst is over, man. This might be a draw.
Yeah, and it's equal pawns. And if it's a draw, that means Hikaru actually takes the match. He knocks out Magnus Carlsen to go into the grand final. Magnus there missing a big opportunity, but Hikaru is going to have to defend this till the very end.
It's going to be very difficult because of the pawn structure. Look at black's pawns. They're loose no matter where your head turns to. And there's a pawn hanging. Black could take white's pawn on B2, but that won't be a good idea because white will deliver a check and win this d6 pawn. And in this kind of endgame, it's often about the quality of the pawns. And if white can win a pass pawn there, if we just show this line, queen b2, check, take on d6 with check, and the important point is the d5 pawn will run to the other side. We'll see a second queen appear. White will win this game. So Hikaru sees this, and now he's deep in the think tank. He really doesn't have that much time. Magnus actually can flag Hikaru here. 3 minutes is not that much compared to your opponent's 5.
This is tough. This actually is tough. I mean, queen end games are the hardest ones. And go through your, open up your Dvoreski page 687, right? When you get there, and it's going to tell you about the queen end games that are very hard, like this one. But yeah, queen e5 I thought was a move, but like it's definitely difficult. Very hard to defend this, actually.
Yeah, centralization with the queen makes sense. When in doubt, centralize your queen. The one thing I know about queen endgames is that nobody knows anything about queen endgames. They're that difficult. You just have to guess at some point. You have so many options. Black's queen had 5 or 6 viable squares. Why not choose the center? Just make that quick decision. And Magnus, I don't think there's anyone as good in queen endgames as Magnus in history. So if anyone can win it, it should be him. Objectively, though, it feels like black should be safe enough because the white king isn't exactly protected either. We could definitely see a perpetual check later if the black queen is able to start harassing the enemy king. So Hikaru, if he's able, should be able to hold this, but 3 minutes. I really fear for him on the clock. Magnus needs to speed up, just bring that white queen back somewhere to safety and just keep the tension. Keep asking those questions. Black's king not finding any safe squares anytime soon.
That's the problem, is the safe squares. I might actually find safety if I can by actually moving the king forward. As you saw with the Fabi game, Hikaru, when the king went all the way up to g4. Something similar like that, because if I can get my king to maybe f4 and then take it, so that's not going to be allowed now. So maybe just king g6.
Magnus spent a long time on that move, though, over a minute. And with only a few minutes left with Armageddon format, that it could be vital later. Now the black king advances. White's pawns now under fire on the queen side. Black's queen may be threatening to go and capture them in the next move or two.
Yeah.
Magnus needs to defend for a move.
Hikaru brings the king into the game, playing the role of a key defender for the king's side pawns. So playing with whatever is left makes a lot of sense. Meanwhile, white's king isn't that active. It looks like Magnus's hopes are purely on the clock right now.
And Hikaru's thinking, can I take this pawn on b2? Magnus brings his king up. I thought he was going to push the pawn that was under attack to save it. And Hikaru's looking at it. He wants to snack on it. And I feel like what the problem for Magnus right now is even if he starts throwing this game, his advantage out the window, he needs to start making moves more quickly. Hikaru would punish Magnus if the colors were reversed on the clock. Magnus needs to do the same.
Yeah, Magnus, he's a great speed player, of course, but his mouse skills, I don't know if they match Hikaru's. And, okay, still extra minute on the clock. He does fix the structure on the queen side, and the black king runs in that direction. Actually, if the queens disappear, Magnus has great winning chances right now. Can he force that in a favourable situation? Advancing, leading from the front, the white king.
I was not expecting that move.
Yeah, king f3 definitely is a nice move, because I'm like zugged out, meaning zugzwang. Like, what do I do as black? I just have to shuffle back and forth.
Queen f5 was a big turn, and g6, a huge blunder. What did Hikaru miss here? What is the winning move?
It might have been queen e6. It might have been queen e6.
What was the winning move?
Trade him in king g4.
Oh, my goodness.
Wow. Forcing the queens off was winning. James is right. Just a couple of moves ago, this was not obvious at all for a human.
I said a lot of Dvoreski there, you know, pawn in games, right? Queen e6 takes, and then king g4, king f6, and I think he's zugged out, f3.
Let's quickly show that, James. Queen swap, and as you mentioned, it is zugzwang. This position, black needs to defend his pawns, and here white can just wait. For example, black's king can even hit this one, and you have another waiting move. You just push
D3,
this pawn.
And then take the pawn.
Yeah.
And GG, you win. Wow. Sick.
And second event in a row where Hikaru is fortunate, because against Wesley So in the Air Things Masters, this was exactly what was happening in a queen endgame. A queen trade could have led to a win for Wesley, but I think this is not over for Hikaru. Magnus is going to keep the game going. Look at the clocks. Magnus is up nearly 40 seconds, and the defensive task, just because the king has run to the queen side, it's not over for Hikaru.
Yeah, this one, he's going to have to defend backs to the wall for the rest of this game, at least another 50 moves, and he's going to have to keep pace on the clock. Look at the two kings. They're running to safety. We said there's never going to be safety for them. They're hiding from any potential checks on that side.
David, the clock, it's getting level there. So it will come down to some dirty flagging by both of them. If the queens get traded, it is advantage Magnus simply because of Hikaru's horrible pawn structure for a king-pawn ending. But till the queens are alive, Hikaru, it's game on. He just needs a draw.
Yeah, he just needs a draw, and wow, 10 seconds in it now. Magnus's camera also froze for a second. This is very relevant. Is his internet connection able to hold up? He's in France. Yeah.
Another big king move. I mean, these playing unexpected king moves. First to F3, now to B3, and Hikaru gives up D6.
He wants to take E4.
Is there a perpetual check?
Does he pick up the E4 pawn? Does he start checking?
Start checking that white king.
Check. He goes B3. There's no perpetual yet. He zigzagged to A3 and B3 after.
Wow, Hikaru now tanking for 20 seconds. He needs to move. I don't think you can get away with just grabbing that white pawn in the center. White will then be the one giving the checks, gaining time on the clock. You need to check and just hope for the best. You need to move.
But look at the clock. He's on a 1 minute, 15 seconds. This is not good. Unless he has a draw by force, he is going to be in trouble of being flagged.
You have to check.
It's a bullet game now.
You have to go king A3. Only move.
Correct.
Where
like
is the
again,
draw?
B3.
B3.
No more checks.
But queen C3, does queen C6 check? I don't know what happens to the queen trade there.
What about centralize and then third mate, right? And then check everywhere else.
Yeah.
He has a check, but then I run A6.
He's got to work it out with less than a minute on his clock. Can he afford a queen trade? Can he threaten checkmate, trap that white king somehow on the edge of the board? He needs to find an accurate move. If he makes a slip now, Hikaru, he's losing.
Queen B1.
I think, though, there's always queen C6 back to C3. So he goes here. I think Magnus can go queen C6 check and bring his queen back to defense. As long as you don't allow a perpetual check, he can flag Hikaru.
Yeah, he can flag Hikaru. Just give a couple of checks first, a couple of quick checks, gain time on the clock, and then retreat that white queen.
Yes.
There's no increment, though. Well, he does give a check. If he comes back, there is a check on A1. Where do you retreat with your queen?
Back to C1, to the first rank. I know you're giving up a pawn F2. You maybe find yourself in a losing position at some point, but you need to beat him on the clock. He only has 45 seconds.
Yeah, 45 seconds. Just check, make your opponent react. That's how you kind of gain time, especially considering your opponent's lower. But Magnus is too slow. Again, not switching to that Armageddon mindset. You've got to be nasty. You've got to be mean here. Just flag.
That's right. He's definitely, when the time gets closer, Hikaru does get a little bit stronger here. Yep, there it is. He pushed and immediately made a move here.
Oh,
wow.
But that move, the eval bar went up. So white can maybe, well, queen E1. You have the A1 square covered. You protect your pawn. You may just start throwing that pass one off the board. He plays it.
That's gross.
And you've got the B4 square covered as well. No checks for black.
Just push the pawn. Just throw
Oh,
it.
He does it. He finds it in 30 seconds for Hikaru. Can he stop the E pawn from advancing, or is this just game over?
I think he's going to block it with his queen, but then he has no more checks.
Yeah, and then the black queen will be purely passive. It's going to be one-way traffic. The white queen is going to activate herself now, and you can play forever this position, Magnus, but 5-6 seconds in it. Wow, it's all about the clock now. It's a winning position for white, we think, or at least a better position, but is it enough on the clock?
Apparently he's made a mistake, but he is up a few seconds. This is going to come down to the wire, everybody.
Make a move, Hikaru. He does it. What?
I mean, he can't trade queens. The black king would be too close.
King E7.
Yeah.
I mean, D8. On the move, right?
19 seconds, he's going to flag him.
Any safe square for black.
Perpetual coming.
Oh, my God.
Oh, queen C2 check. So you have a counter check if black checks in the second rank. So he's checking in diagonals. Wow, king B1.
Got to move.
Oh, no more checks.
Oh, and what's happened there?
What happened?
We see a reaction. Magnus is mouse.
Oh, no!
Oh, my God. Did he pre-move?
He mouse slipped.
Whoa, and Hikaru there celebrating. Magnus mouse slipped, blundering into that queen. What an end. And Hikaru Nakamura takes this match.
Wow.
Unbelievable.
Wow. What a finish. We didn't expect that. We thought it might be decided on the board, decided on the clock, but not with a mouse slip. And Magnus, yeah.
Man, furious. Furious.
Chess is harsh.
Chess is hard, bro.
Resilient defense from Hikaru. I mean, this guy, he just does not lose.
What a beast. I mean, just impossible to beat. You're up on the clock. You've got to play it out till the end. What a player, Hikaru Nakamura. In the Armageddon, you've got to use all your chances, and that's what he did.
He certainly did. I mean, to win that game with mere seconds on your clock, he had a bunch of checks at his disposal. Magnus was trying to avoid a draw by force. He moused and lost his queen, but Hikaru was putting up tenacious defense the whole way through.
Yeah.
We're just in shock right now.
Wow.
What happened there, David, at the very end?
We have to show in slow motion those final moves. Both sides had mere seconds left. White still has an extra pawn. Objectively, though, black is active enough to hold the draw. This position, white's king hiding from checks. No way for the black queen to continue harassing that white king now. And it's actually with White to play, a win. If you step forward, this is a discover check. The pawn can step forward, attacking the enemy king. And here, Hikaru found a really clever defense, moved his king across. Magnus decided, okay, the pawn is dropping anyway. I'm going to throw it out of the way. This is a discovered check. The king takes the pawn. And the move Magnus wanted to play was queen takes this pawn. If he takes this pawn, he's actually a pawn up. The game goes on. It should be a draw. But I think he would have won on time. Instead, however, he did drop the queen on its journey to the b6 square on f6. The worst possible mouse slip, of course, losing the queen after king takes queen. And that was how this final was decided. Hikaru moves on.
Actually, any other queen move where you're not dropping it on the spot, you win. And that was the pain on Magnus Carlsen after that mouse slip. Giving the game, giving the match, and Magnus Carlsen is out of the tournament. And Hikaru, what a fighter, what a beast. He takes this Armageddon. He kept up his resourcefulness. He did not give up in the end. Many would have, and it paid off. Wow, what a match.
Man, that's crazy. The defense was serious.
Oh, just unbelievable stuff. And this was our scoreline. We saw two epic fights in the Rapid, ending in draws, and a nail-biting Armageddon, which just had us on the edge of our seat. It could have gone either way. And in the end, the mouse slip caused Magnus Carlsen the match, which means that Hikaru Nakamura will be moving on to the grand final against Fabiano Caruana, and we are being joined by the winner. Hikaru, congratulations.
Thanks. Yeah, it was a wild match, but I came out on top.
You really did, and Hikaru, it really was your resilience and resourcefulness. Was that the key to today's match victory?
Yeah, I mean, this match, of course, it really, the first two games weren't super exciting. I mean, the third game, obviously, Armageddon was the one that was really critical. I mean, I think Magnus made a couple of mistakes. I thought, for example, a mistake being a generic term, but I thought when Magnus played G5, it was not a good decision practically because it simplified the position. I felt that at that point, I think I had maybe 5.5 minutes left, and I thought that he could have just played like Queen G3 and F4, just kept the pressure up and kept the game going forever. And he sort of simplified a little bit too early. Obviously, later, it still was very, very tricky, but I found, I think, a lot of very, very good moves. There were many moments when I could have lost in the Queen and Pawn end game. Probably I had a couple ways that I could have drawn, but without like 2 or 3 minutes on the clock, probably impossible. So yeah, it all worked out.
Hikaru, it was amazing to see unfold there. And there's some great questions from the chat about you and Magnus and your rivalry. In some ways, do you consider this a kind of modern Kasparov-Karpov duel?
I guess you could say it over the last like 3 or 4 years since the pandemic began. I think, to be fair, if you go prior to that, what is a good example? I think a good example, I'm trying to think of like a European analogy, but I'll just use a baseball one. It's like comparing the New York Yankees and the Boston Red Sox. The Red Sox won a World Series in 1918. They didn't win again until I think it was 2004. That's probably a better comparison. The Yankees won something like 15 or 16 World Series during that time. So I don't think you could say that in terms of the early days. But the last couple of years, I've found a way to play well. I think the main thing is I don't fall apart against Magnus. In the past, I would have fallen apart very quickly, especially like this third game where when he played Queen H7, I had missed this Queen H7 idea altogether. And even if I do actually look at the cams, I saw Magnus's reaction when I played Rook F8, and he realized that he had made a slight mistake too, allowing that. So there's been a lot of back and forth the last couple of years. And I think, yeah, it's great for the fans for sure.
Well, just on that note, Hikaru, you're talking about some of the psychology. Did you feel like you had the upper hand when you outbid Magnus in this Armageddon?
No, I think the thing is in this event more so than the first one. Like the first one, I think all of us were trying to be like super precise in our bids, see just how low you can go. And I kind of was like, I'm just going to bid something. I didn't even really think about it that much. It was just like, make a bid. Who cares? You get white. You have 6 minutes. Just deal with it. And so there wasn't, I think, as much psychology going on. But it was nice because I think if you go back to the first event, I think I was bidding something like, I bid like 757 against Wesley or something completely ridiculous. I got away with it, but no, I was happy to be black having draws because, of course, in chess, most games do end in a draw, something like 60% plus. So that was an advantage, but still, the opening I got was not good. Magnus complicated very early, but you just keep trying to play moves, and I found a way.
Great job, Hikaru. Congratulations. Defensive wizard. So we have a question from the chat actually here is, what is your favorite thing to do after a chess game or match?
My favorite thing to do after a chess game or match is do a recap for YouTube and make money. That's my favorite thing to do.
That's beautiful.
Hikaru, congratulations. And looking ahead, tomorrow you get a chance for revenge against Fabi. What are your thoughts on the match?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's going to be tough. I will say that, like, coming off the high from today to have to play Fabian tomorrow, I mean, to have to win one match and then win a second match. But you know, I would say that if I look at this event, I felt that yesterday was the day that I played the worst by far. And I mean, it was really unfortunate because Fabiano also had a bad day. I mean, if Fabiano was playing well, I wouldn't have anything to complain about, but he didn't play his best either. So I think, you know, probably come out tomorrow, try to play good chess. And I mean, obviously I have to win 2 matches, but you play and you see what happens.
Hikaru, it could have gone either way. It was an awesome match and really fun to watch. So entertaining. I have to ask you, at the
can I add something briefly, though? I just want to add one thing, though, which I think is important. Like, when I'm talking about the moment when he played G5, like, the reason I say he simplified too early is because this queen and pawn endgame, if we reach this queen and pawn endgame, I think at the start it's in like 3.5 minutes. If I have like 2 minutes there, I lose that, I would say, like 90% of the time. But because he simplified too soon, that extra like 90 seconds to extra like 100 seconds really did make a huge difference. Like a huge difference. I do want to say that.
Right.
Fire.
Wow. That was a very exciting match, Hikaru. It was an awesome match to watch. And I was going to ask you that in that final moment, really anything could have happened. And we saw the reaction on both you and Magnus. And maybe we can bring that up for you because this was such a big moment. And you can see it when you fought so hard and finally it goes your way. What was going on in your mind when that Queen F6 happened?
I mean, it was just nice to win the match because, again, like, this is the thing that Magnus is better than anybody else. It's like there were many moments, like, around the time that he played King B3, Queen D4. Like, when he spent 30 seconds to go King B3 and I played Queen D4, I was sure it was a draw. I didn't see the forced draw, but I was sure it was a draw. And then he found ways to keep it complicated. So it's like you're trying to defend. And I mean, he can't win every match. I mean, I know he's the greatest player of all time, but he can't win every match. Like, somebody can't just get lucky every single time. So it was just nice for a change to have something go my way.
Yeah, it was amazing, Hikaru. And what do you think was the reason that everyone loves watching a Magnus-Hikaru matchup?
I mean, it's because, again, like, it's because in the last couple of years, I've actually, you know, I've learned how to play somewhat decently against Magnus, whereas for the previous 10 years, I mean, I just lost every game. It wasn't even close. And I think when you combine that with the fact that we're probably the 2 most popular figures in chess right now, and if the matches are close, like, that's what you need in chess. Like, you don't want one-sided matches. You don't want things to be boring and just wipeouts. Like, that's never good for the fans. And so I think when you have us playing, the matches are always tense, always close. It's just very, very good for the game. Very good.
And Hikaru, I just have a quick question. You talked about your own growth playing Magnus. What can you say about Fabiano's growth in quicker time controls? Because he had many critics in earlier stages of his career, but now he seems to do very well in all of these rapid events.
I mean, I think that's just the nature of chess. When you don't have classical tournaments all that frequently anymore. I mean, like, even somebody like Fabiano, who plays every over the board event, I mean, I'm thinking he probably plays maybe 6 or 7 classical chess tournaments a year, and in the past it would have been something like 10, 11, 12. And I think when you have to shift gears, I mean, Fabiano obviously very serious player, and he's taken blitz and rapid much more seriously, and I think it shows in his results. So again, I mean, in a one-off tournament, sometimes he won't do great, but overall everyone's so strong that to me it's not that surprising. I mean, it just really isn't surprising at all.
And Hikaru, final quick question. The T-shirt, was that chosen specifically for today?
Not really. I mean, I figured why not? I mean, because I do feel like yesterday there were moments when I actually did care too much, like in that first game and that second game against Fabiano, getting too excited, too into it. And it wasn't really about today. It's just something to do, something to get people talking. And yeah, it's what it is.
Yeah. That Armageddon definitely got people talking. Fantastic play there, Hikaru, and fantastic resilience as always. Thank you so much and congratulations. We'll see you tomorrow in the grand final.
Thank you so much, you guys.
Hikaru Nakamura, after a dramatic win against Magnus Carlsen in that Armageddon, knocks Magnus Carlsen out and advances to the grand final, where he will be playing against Fabiano Caruana. That abrupt finish in the Armageddon, I still can't get over what just happened, James.
It's like karma. In fact, Nakamura got mated in one, rook f8, and then it got right back to him. The Kaisa, or whatever the chess gods they say, right, came right back to him, of course. It worked out for him. So, I mean, hey, we got mated in one, but then the next day I beat Carlsen. So I'm feeling good if I'm Nakamura.
Yeah, that would actually explain a lot, David. I mean, yesterday's match against Fabi could have gone either way as well. And Hikaru gets a chance for revenge tomorrow. What are you expecting?
Yeah, most of us would have had our heads hanging. You know, we would have been cursing those chess gods after a blunder like yesterday, but it shows the strength of Nakamura's character, coming back from that blunder to beat Magnus. And tomorrow, I expect him to want revenge much more than he showed, actually, in that interview. I think it will really drive him, and when he's in a final, he's going to try and win it. So, yeah, it's going to be close. Nako will have his task cut out, but I think he's the favorite.
Wow, what action we had today, and tomorrow it does continue. Hikaru's got to be feeling good and ready for that grand final.
I'm sure Hikaru's feeling great, but Fabiano's feeling rested, and he has not one life but two. And look at these results from Fabiano Caruana since the start of the Air Things Masters knockout. He was in Division 2. Look at those dubs. He beats Deep Tai and Ghosh. Then everyone else he beats is above 2,600, including Yu Yangi twice in the Air Things Masters final. Then he comes into the Chessable Masters Division 1 after winning D2. He beats Liamlei, Artemiev, Hikaru Nakamura. He faces Hikaru again, but he hasn't lost a match in these 4-game KOs.
Yeah, that's all dubs. Look at all the dub. I just smell dub. He is a dub, walking dub, right? Okay. Fabiano is all about dubs, and he's going to try to get it done tomorrow as well.
Wow, can I take it back that Nakamura's the favorite? Look at these scores. This is incredible, this hot streak from Fabi. He's in great form.
Yeah, he is in great form, and he's got to keep that form up tomorrow, facing the beast that is Hikaru Nakamura. What an Armageddon that was. What a rapid potion that was. These two never fail to entertain us and give us the best chess in the world. There is also amazing chess action in Division 2. Let's bring up our graphic as we see Nadibek Abdusatro beat Maxime Vachier-Lagrave 3-0. That is destruction, Robert.
It was a clean sweep for the Uzbek teenager. Anish Giri, Yu Yangi moved on, but he actually kept going in Division 2. There are so many games to be played here. Anish, he moved on past Yu Yangi, but Maxime Vachier-Lagrave, revenge is on his mind. He gets to take on Nurdibek Abdusattorov in the D2 Grand Final. That should be fun, one tomorrow as well.
There is a lot of fun, not just in Division 2, but Division 3 as well. Wow, Amin Tabatabai taking down Alexei Sarana, David. That was a big fight.
Yeah, big fight, but many congratulations to Amin Tabatabai. He deserved it. He went through, he won all of his matches, and he takes Division 3, the title.
Yeah. Amazing chess everywhere, and we have been getting some amazing selfies from our viewers. We did say we will reveal the winner. Want to thank everyone who sent in their selfies watching the matches and showing us how you are following the Chessable Masters. Okay, I love that, and that is our winner of the day, who has won an Air Things device. Wow, there's a lot going on in that photograph.
There's you in there, Tanya. You got you.
I love it. That's why we're giving it to him, because I'm in it. That's the main reason. And this is the device that we will be sending you, the new Wave Plus by Air Things. So you will know how the air quality is in your room so that you can play your best chess. Wow, what action we had today, and it has been an amazing day of chess. A big shout out to our chat for joining us on the ride. It's always a fun day when we've got the best players in the world playing the best tour. We will be back with the grand final tomorrow. Should we just do this for the whole show?
G4, oh my goodness. There we go, there we go, Magnus.
And he does it. He does it.
Boy, you better get him checked.
Black's rook is actually on the third rank, going to come and take a pawn with check, attacking multiple pieces.
This is
Fire!
You know, he tricked him. Oh no, my pawn, Eric Rosen style. I really don't like the look this for Hikaru on the board, but also on the clock.
That's fancy. It's not just the suit. It's not just, you know.
The game is over.